for Europe, baby. All professional, new mics.
3 new mics, right? Everybody's on the new mic.
No, I'm on the old one because I already had a good one.
But you bought a new one.
I bought a new one as a backup. Yeah.
And we're not gonna tell anyone who's our guest yet because we're gonna do our week first, like we used to do.
Yeah. Back to the roots.
Albert, why didn't you start?
I mean, my week was kind of quiet. I had a knife making class with 2 guys. I started the new batch of steak knives for the restaurant in Vienna. This time it's a batch of 10 knives, RWL 34 steak knives. Did all the hand sanding, the laser engraving of their logo. And then I was preparing the Damascus forging class, which is supposed to start tomorrow at 12. That was basically my week.
Nice.
What do you have to do to get ready for the class? Do you pre-make the billets and stuff for them?
Yeah. We have to weld the billets because we TIG weld them, and this takes a few hours.
Such professionals.
And tomorrow, I mean, we do we draw the billet out and then we cut it and then we restack it tomorrow with the students. Then we're only gonna MIG weld them because then it's only like 7 layers which have to be MIG welded. But with the first billets, we TIG weld them before we start.
Very good.
Yeah.
Nice. So a productive week.
Yeah, it was all right. Yeah. And we bought a new power hammer.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, we did, yeah. Which gets picked up tomorrow.
What do you got now? A Bichet?
A Bichet, a 50 kilogram Bichet, yeah.
Yeah, you sound like you really needed that.
Yeah, because this one was missing. Yeah. We have a 30 kilogram Bichet and a 50 kilogram nasal type hammer, and we were missing a 50 kilogram Bichet hammer, and this one gets picked up tomorrow. Yeah,
because God knows what would have you done without this one?
No, we don't need it, but it was missing in our collection.
Yeah,
because now we have the 30, a 50, a 100, 150 kilogram Bichet power.
I don't even make knives, but I'm jealous.
Yeah, you should come visit at some point.
Yeah, I will.
You know what hammer I got?
A carbide hammer.
The one from Brian Housen, my carbide hammer, yeah.
Finally.
Oh, it finally arrived. Do you have them both or just the first one?
Just the rounding hammer.
Oh, yeah. I have that other one, too. I'm thinking about making a reel, and then using the wrong side, you know? Great.
So, Matt, how was your week?
My week was good. Lots of balcony stuff that I won't bore you with. And I finished and sent out the rest of the house-made order finally, after the massive fuck-up.
What was that? Platens?
It was 100 curved platens, 100 carbide platens, and 100 leather platens.
Are you bringing those platens to Solingen with you?
If you want one, of course.
Yeah, I want one.
No, I'm going to
take.
Obviously, I'm going to take some examples and leave them there for someone.
For someone is me.
Yeah. So, but I'm glad they're gone, and I could focus on getting ready for the knife shows.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's like next weekend. You know that, right?
I know. I still have to make the fucking stand for the Revolution. It's horrible. Yeah. Probably gonna do that Friday or something.
When does the show start?
Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was busy this week. I started making a new tool that I will bring to the Holland show, hopefully. I'm working on a carbide scribe on one side with a cap to protect the thin tip from the carbide. And on the other side is a reamer, so you can ream out holes that you drill through the handles. It'll work on hardened steel, and you'll be able to scribe on hardened steel and everything too. So.
Did you design it?
I did, yeah.
Oh, lordy lord.
Do you already have a name for it?
Not really.
Okay.
Maybe one of our listeners can help us. I was thinking if we do it, if we do it in English, it's a scribe and a rima, a scribe and a chamfer tool. So it could be a scrampfer. It almost sounds German, right?
It sounds like a Dutch word. It's a rimmer.
Yeah.
Well, that's something else.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah.
Scamper.
And I also got a 6-pack of Camone beer.
Who else got some Camone beer?
From the Anchorage Brewing Company in Alaska. And our guest, Mr. Fingal Ferguson, also got some of this beer, I believe. Right, Fingal?
There we go. We did indeed. How are you doing, everybody?
Good.
Great.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Good.
I'm just filling the beer up. No, I got a care pack as well, which I've had one already, and it is delicious. So I thought for the occasion that's in it, I'd crack open another one. I'm sort of hoarding them for special occasions.
Fucking Camone didn't even send me one. What a. Ugh.
Did Ben send you the beer, guys?
No, it came from I got it from further away from Anchorage.
Yeah, so I worked out a talk with Anchorage. He was going to send me some, and somehow it got mixed up, and he was going to send mine to Camone's, and then Camone would send it to me. And the first package came, and Camone sent me some, and that wasn't actually my package. So maybe I'll get another 6-pack. That'll be good.
I believe there is somewhere that he supplies in Europe, and it's probably worth. But I mean, of course, this is freshly made, so I'm not sure if it was part of all the shipments. But I have heard. I'll quiz him more. Gabe's coming here to Ireland on the 17th, so I'm looking forward to meeting him, and we can find easier ways of getting his beers because they are delicious.
So is he coming because you guys are doing a collab on something?
No, he's actually coming to Ireland as part of his. There's an adventure. I think he's doing a collaboration in Sweden, if I have it right, or Denmark. So I think he's making a proper European trip out of it. And while in Ireland, he mentioned he was coming here, and I said, oh, "Pop on down." So we're going to cross paths. So yeah, it's all ahead of us.
Yeah.
But he's doing fantastic things. I've been very excited seeing his skills and everything he gets up to. I mean, like as we play with food and do everything here, you know, and kind of have that dual world where I make knives as well. It's kind of exciting to meet somebody else in the food and drink world who also, you know, has a venting and creative soul for the craft world or for making. I think Mareko was always talking very highly of him, and I think was up there. And that's when I first came across Gabe.
Yeah, there's an interesting overlap in that, like knife making and you know, all the special food stuff.
Well, I think for most, I mean, in a lot of cases, I mean, most of the makers, knife makers, I kind of know have a strong connection to food for obvious reasons. It's the tool of their trade, and they get the bug. And I suppose like that. I think that there's a lot of things that make sense. I mean, if you are one of those people, like the workload in food is incredible, and I think people in who kind of make knives and everything else are not sort of lazy, sit on their hands kind of characters. So I often find people who make knives have fingers in many pies, if that makes sense, and literally or figuratively. But you have a bunch of shows all ahead of you. I hear you're all going to different shows in different directions. Do you overlap in any of them?
Keith and I are both doing the Dutch knife show, and then all three of us are doing the German knife show, the Solingen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to, but it's just attending Blade Show this year.
Yeah, I've only been to one knife show in my life, and that was Blade Show in America. I haven't been to any of the European ones. That'd be an interesting thing to kind of go and check it out.
It's about time.
You're like in the same position as Ben Camone. Ben went to one show and he hated it, and it's really you guys don't have any reason to. Your knives sell out within like 10 seconds when you put them online.
Yeah.
I didn't. I think there's multiple reasons for going to a knife show. I mean, I'm lucky that I can sell my knives online, and but the bigger reason for probably going, and I didn't put knives out on a table. I didn't do anything like that. I actually wanted to get to meet people and make connections and find new handle materials and shake hands and just get to meet people. And I didn't want to do that staying in one place, because I've done a lot for that in my life in the food world. I actually just wanted to be free and easy and go for an adventure. And a good friend of mine actually lives in Atlanta, and I went to stay with him, and I went over with Blenheim Forge and a few of the other wonderful people, Hugo Byrne and Holly Loftus. We're all staying in the same house. So it was a wonderful adventure. But I think for Europe and a few other things, the knife shows, for me, it's usually more of a case of I don't leave the farm much. I don't get, literally, I need a good excuse to pack a bag.
Well, Solingen can be a good excuse.
Yeah, it could indeed. But what's the date of it?
May 11th and 12th.
Yeah. Well, I probably won't do it this year, but I think I just need to put it on my radar for next year. How big is it? I mean, like, I suppose in some ways, does it focus literally just on knives? Is there something else that sneaks in there?
They do knives, so there's sword makers there. There's on the first floor, there's some kind of a crazy barber that like cuts hair with fire, and they do some they do some sword fighting things in between, and they always have a contest. And we actually have this year, me and two other makers working on a charity project where we have 20 European knife makers making all the same blade shape, and they're going to be auctioned off for charity. So there'll be a table set up with like a glass box with all the knives in there. You can buy tickets, and all the money will go to Kinderlachen, which is like a children's charity thing here in Europe. So it's going to be the first time
Wonderful.
we do that. Yep.
What was the outlay for the knife design, or what was the limitations?
It's Albert, do you remember? Is it 220 centimeter?
I don't remember.
It's a hidden tang knife anyway, mono steel, and pretty much we're going for the same blade shape for all the makers, and everybody can do their own take on the handle. So it'll be interesting to see how people can set apart their design in the handle work, I guess, and show who they are through their handle work.
I'll just go ahead and put Fingal right on the spot. Like, what about the next? Because you're going to do this again, right, Keith?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So,
hey, definitely keep me posted. I think it's always good, especially when it's for a good cause like this. Yeah. No, actually, we just recently did. We just did a good fundraiser for two good causes with when I was over in Austria. I went to visit Tobias and Benjamin, and I did the course there. And I think as a sort of to celebrate the little adventure, the steel that I'd made with Tobias, and then with Benjamin, I sort of spent a bit of time playing around with an idea, and then I finished the knife off in Ireland, and we sold that and raised a $2,500. So it's kind of nice to, I think, to use the occasion to sort of creatively make something and learn from it, and then also do some good for to do some good with it as well.
It's everybody wins. It's good.
Yeah.
I put in a bid, but unfortunately, the 900 euros wasn't even close.
I'm glad, and I think that there was a lot of people brought up a valid point, which was I suppose to do lotteries and tickets, and I think we had that conversation that lotteries are the same thing as gambling, which therefore makes it illegal in Ireland to do it that way. And I think there's lots of loopholes and ways you can do it. Like you can sell a ticket, and I send out a ticket, potentially, or a sort of a sticker, or do some kind of thing that is basically the equivalent of that. But it's very complicated, and it's a pity that there. But are there other methods?
It's a loophole, the good, like in the good way, but people use that loophole the wrong way as well, where they're pretending to do something good and then just raise a shit ton of money. And
I mean, the other thing that went to my mind is if somebody made a donation and they could then log the donation code, it'd be the same thing. That's almost the exact same as a sort of a lottery, but then how to keep track of that. So then you have like the crazy job of sort of tracking if people are making up the numbers or not. I don't know. I think the honesty of people is great. I mean, you kind of over-examine them. I think the simplest form always wins in the end, and the most like uncomplicated, concrete method. And I'm sure just with more time. But I mean, it's how much time you've put into it. At the same time, it was all supposed to be kept simple for a good cause.
Yeah, the way you guys did it was definitely the easy way to do it. The way we got around it was the charity that we're working with, because they're a non-profit charity. They're allowed to do it that way and sell tickets, and they can only do it for 1 week. So we have the show May 11th and 12th, and 1 week before that, you'll be able to buy tickets online, and you'll be able to buy them at the show, and then it ends within 7 days. So.
Are the knives finished? Can they only be viewed at the show, or is there another viewing platform to actually see these and the end results?
No, we have them on Instagram. It's called Fingal Ferguson. I'll put the link in the show notes. You guys can see all the makers, the knives, and the progress that's being made up until the day of the show, and you'll be able to see them in person at the show in Solingen. I'm not sure how the charity is going to work out the website, but they are going to have a website where you can go on and buy tickets, and I'm sure you'll be able to see some of the knives there. So
fantastic! And how many in total?
Yeah. We got 20 of them, and both of Tobias and Ben Camone will be on there.
Okay.
Myself
I
and
heard
Albert.
them mentioning it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Sounds like a
great
good
project.
crew. Brilliant.
So the charity knife that you did, how much did you guys get for that? You said 2,500.
Yeah, it was roughly that, I think, and a little bit. But I think what was kind of for me, and kind of like I said, the interesting part was to actually kind of learn new skills on that week and the merging of things, and of course, I suppose to put everybody's knives together and celebrate them. And I think the billet that I made with Tobias, and to actually use the kind of the handle style, and then reinvent the shape with the kind of the typical raised, and then with the step that I kind of incorporate into it. I mean, that's a lot of fun. I mean, to actually see the methods and to kind of combine that. But yeah, no, I think the whole thing kind of came together quite fun, and luckily we had somebody who was willing to go to that point and do. I hadn't done an auction. There's something kind of weird and wrong but wonderful about them at the same time. It's always good when they start going for good money. If you always worry if it was going to be sold for less than what you're expecting, and as soon as you go beyond a certain point, that's all good. And I think there are wonderfully generous people, and I think some of the most generous people were doing it privately through the DMs and emails. They weren't sort of in the public eye of messaging underneath. And I think that's definitely inspired by the good cause and the people that the money was going to, which was the World Central Kitchen and the Doctors Without Borders. And yeah, so I think that was a good thing to, and I'd love kind of. It was kind of good. My week in Austria was fantastic. I was kind of looking forward to the excuse to kind of like take it easy and relax for a while, and I actually felt like I needed a break after I got back. So it turned out to be good work at the time, and I think that was the main ambition. I mean, there's always so much that happens here, and I kind of was really busy before I left because I just finished a drop, and then when I came back, I kind of hit the ground running. And I don't know if it's been the same with you, but there's all those terrible head colds and flus that have been traveling around lately, and I've got 5 kids. So I think I get the reinvented version of it on multiple occasions. So
it's fucking horrible with these kids. They take some new version of something. They take it home like every other week. It's exhausting.
It kind of happens. I think you're just going to get it out of the way. I think we all inevitably get these bugs, and I think there are periods when I've never been sick at the exact same time as my wife, and this was the first time ever. There's normally only one of us at a time, and this one took the 2 of us out.
But you got the man flu, so that's way worse.
Yeah, I was crippled in bed and I slept for 24 hours, whereas Kira wasn't feeling good for a couple of days, but she was up and about. But yeah.
That's
but
that's
the
what
kids
moms
had the
do.
vomiting bug. I
Oh
know
my
she.
God.
I'm married above my station. I have a woman who's far superior than me in every way. So I got very lucky. And then the kids are fantastic, but I love the way that bugs. Kids don't even realize they're sick, really. I mean, there's nothing funnier than kids just like kind of just. It's a mild inconvenience. We just get more pissed off when it happens to us.
Yeah. I think it got worse after they were like with lockdowns and shit. After that, I think the kids needed to reset and get all the bugs again to boost up
definitely.
their immune system a bit.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's all part of it. It is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're probably more vulnerable to them and stuff as well. I don't know. But I think it comes in waves. I think there's just periods where you just get those bugs and lurgies out of the way and then get on with things.
Yes.
But yeah, so I've just been, today was, I've been back making kind of doing more grind. I've got that wonderful kind of stiffness between my shoulder blades. I've been pushing my luck and sort of grinding, I think, multiple blades for the past couple of days and hand sanding. And do you know that one literally between your shoulder blades when it's kind of just stiff and sore from the crouched over hand
I have
sanding?
it, but it's not from knife making. It's when I do all the curved plans, I grind them all like 100.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're just done. It's right between the shoulders, indeed.
Yeah, no,
Too
it's
much
true.
in the same
We've got
position.
I know. I think that's it. There's, I mean, would you make a jig or do any kind of thing to sort of help that? I mean, is it a repetitive job or is it just a case of just fucking get on with it and just by the time you farted around making something for the job, you'd have it done?
Yeah. So basically, that's the how'd you call that? I just whenever I think about making it easier, I'm like, fuck it. I'm just gonna get over it.
Just get on with it. If the idea comes to you while you're doing it as an easy method, and sometimes you just find you keep going, and other times you do find a solution that comes to you. No, it's true. I've been playing around with sort of jigs and things, and I often make wonderful mistakes, more mistakes with the jigs than I do freehanding. It's just freehanding plays attacks.
The second you think you need one, then it's urgent and you actually need one, and then you're like, nah, I'll just do that next time. But then the second you're done, it's not urgent anymore, so it goes to the bottom of the list, and well, vice versa, keeps going like that.
I must find there was a really good class that was like a sort of a yoga, but for lazy fuckers like myself. So it was like baby yoga. It wasn't advanced kind of like one, but it was specifically designed for back. And it was like Monday at sort of 7:45 on every Monday. And that class has sadly had to stop due to a crossover where the instructor couldn't do it anymore. And I'm wondering, I must try and find something else like that because I think that made the hell of a difference. It's incredibly humbling how simple kind of leaning over kind of exercises and these sort of different things that look wonderfully easy from across the room. Actually, you can feel the muscles and you can feel everything else and the good they're doing. I must try and get back into it because I think that is definitely something that as we get older and older, the work we put in now will sort of save us a lot more of shit and grief later if we do that kind of stuff now. But it's another job on a list, isn't it?
Yeah, and it gets to the bottom every time like it's not urgent anymore. So
time is precious. Time is precious. Yeah.
Time is very precious.
As soon as you start feeling better, that gets pushed to the side, and when you stop, then it all comes back.
It's the same. It's the same with like back problems and you know everything in general. It's always like when it's urgent, you think I'm gonna fix this, and then when it's slightly fixed, you'll forget about it.
Well, I've got a homemade hot tub kind of thing that was an old milk tank in the back of our house. That's kind of we keep warm with a sort of a heat pump. Of course it is, yeah. And I think that if I had a choice between going to yoga or sitting in the hot tub, it's drinking a beer. I wonder which
which one will win. I wonder which one it'll be.
Hot tub in the Anchorage Brewery wins.
Yeah. It's been but this has been one of the wettest years in history. I think Ireland's we're having a very, very wet time. I think it's a combination between the solar eclipses and the El Niños and global warming, of course, but put them all together and you have this elevated sort of wet period that we're having. But I think we're at the tail end of it now. So
when it's wet, it's global warming. When it's dry, it's global warming. It's just global warming all the time.
Like I said, it's probably more of a case of amplifications of these things. I mean, definitely, it's something we have to get used to.
The water level is so high over here; it's just right beneath the tiles. It's insane. Like one more drop, and then I'll be like standing in water all the time. The ground is so fucking wet. No, just the floor, like everywhere.
Oh, okay. I know what you mean.
It's terrible.
We get our wet feet going.
We need some dry some dry periods now.
Oh, that's all ahead of us. Exactly. This is seasonality.
Mm-hmm. That's what you got those big banana shoes for, right? To keep your feet dry.
the wooden shoes. There was the
clogs.
I love the. Yeah, there's a lovely guy who used to come and deliver to our farm, and he's Dutch, and he buys in young cheeses from Holland, ages them at home, and then sort of sells them because he has really good source of sheep and goats, kind of goudas, and he used to arrive and the van would pull up outside, and he'd throw the two wooden clogs out the window, then open the door and sort of jump into them. It was part of his little, I'm here.
Awesome. Yeah,
I love it.
Cheese is a big thing in Holland, a very big thing. Do you? I think we cling on to Dutch people.
Well, we cling on to our traditions, don't we? I mean, I love my grandfather's shirts and all these kind of things, and they mean more to you as you get older. Because, like, I'm sure there's much more comfortable shoes in the world than wooden clogs, but there's greater reasons than that to wear them.
Exactly. Just these two other guys don't understand. Keith and Albert, they're just constantly making fun of our wooden shoes.
I've only had rubber shoes from China, so I don't know the difference.
Oh man,
with steel caps, yeah.
I actually have a friend that owns a cheese. Is it called a cheese store? That sounds horrible, but he has I think it's ranked like yearly the best shop in Holland.
Fantastic.
You should.
Yeah, the manager for the smokehouse who runs the place. He's Dutch, and I mean he is incredible. I'm so blessed to have him in my life, but he's the total opposite of myself, and I think that's why it works. I'm the airy fairy running around coming up with wonderful ideas, and he's the one sort of telling me, "Don't be a fucking idiot. Keep it simple. Work with the system." And
boots on the ground type guy.
Exactly, and I think there's a logic. I mean, every culture can get accused of like, hey, look, the Irish get smeared for being sort of drinking too much, and every culture kind of has something that it gets kind of tarred with.
But the way you describe that guy is exactly what we're accused of all the time, and it's not like, but it's true. We are.
Is it
like
the worst thing in the world? If the Irish get called pissheads and you're called efficient and logical?
Yeah. I mean, it's what it is. I mean, look at our country and what we do in the world. Our country is like tiny as shit, but you
produce the like nearly 80% of all the vegetables and flowers for Europe. Yeah, exactly. In such a small place. We should give you a few other problems to start working on. You can get ahead of that.
Yeah. They're starting to fuck with our farmers, so I don't know how long they're gonna accept or keep accepting what they're doing to them.
Well, the problem is that being a farmer myself, everything there's a reason and there's a logic behind everything. But how do you solve the problems we need to solve without seriously upsetting a lot of people? And that's almost next to impossible. And I think the one thing in the world that you have to do is not tell somebody they can't do something. You tell somebody, can you try and do this, which will give you the same results? And with everything else, and that's always
And you know a lot about farming, and maybe you know a lot about Dutch farmers, but they are ranked number one in efficiency, just like we talked about. They are, like, for the past 20 years, they've been doing everything humanly possible to go above and beyond. And, like, it's still not enough. Like, they're really pissed off over here. I mean, everywhere, but like, I don't see that going well, like, for a long time.
Oh yeah, I don't think I'm the one to have this conversation with. I think because I have my own fears and worries about everything in the world. I mean, like, I'd sooner have a much more positive, and I don't think we're going to bore the shit out of the people listening to this.
No,
and we're not.
no.
We're
But,
definitely,
like,
we're sure shit not going to answer anything either. I think that. Nope. You just have to test the waters and push until there's pushback. And I think sometimes politicians need to say they're doing something, and whatever is the point at time of sort of, I suppose, public demand, that's what they're going to push on. And, you know, hey, look, farmers, we have cows that fart, we have things that rot, and we do everything else, but we're also the ones that feed the world and do everything else. And I think the questions that I have that I'm more curious about is, which is better, a giant, very efficient farm, or 100 small families that kind of have small holdings that kind of make food and do things in certain ways? And that's my kind of question that I'm kind of interested in. You know,
but it's obviously option B.
I don't know. It's a clash. I mean, like, multiple shitty tractors versus one very large one, versus perhaps 100 households all making money and working with their own communities. There's pros and cons for everything. And I think the world has changed so fast and so quick. And I think that there is technology around the corner that will help with everything. I mean, I'm so excited to see, on a more positive note, and let's always try and keep it positive, because there's enough boring, negative shit in the world. But, like, I've seen, like, the chemicals, and I grew up with a sort of a chemical-free farm where we're kind of, I mean, we're full-on fucking hippie kind of type characters. That I kind of grew up in this great hippie part of the country, very positive kind of, like, people doing it for all the right reasons. It came from very educated backgrounds, but really wanted to escape the rat race. And that kind of bloomed into this part of the Ireland, like Ireland, where I come from, is like where 85% of all the artisan producers in this country came from this small part of the country. Like, literally one county, the part of that county produced 85% of all the artisan food in Ireland. So that was crazy. And that's because so many people left different parts of the world and brought with them their knowledge and started doing all these things. So I kind of grew up in this fun environment. But back to what I was saying was that with technology, you have the likes of now, rather than spraying chemicals to kind of mass grow, when you're growing monocrops, you know, it's you want to protect those crops and spray chemicals. I've seen these amazing they're lasers. Basically what they have is they're using AI to analyze what's growing, and they're zapping the weeds, using this process to actually eliminate the weed rather than spraying DDT or gramoxone or any of these kind of things. Like, there is ways that for every, like I said, for every cowboy in the world, there's a very honest person.
Yeah. That sounds terrible. I mean, lasers?
And for every modern, and yeah, I know I love the crazy. But look, I'm using a fiber laser I've just got one recently to put on my logos on and stuff like that. So we know that this technology is getting better and better and easier. Yeah. But, like, if you can literally take a camera, scan quickly what's going on, recognize what's good and what's bad, and zap it as you pass over it at high speed, doing 40 kilometers an hour in a tractor, you know, then we can produce cleaner and better food in certain ways. But my heart of hearts is much more excited by I suppose hearing of smaller producers and people who make fantastic food, and going to farmers markets and seeing things that are made with love and care, and just fucking taste better for that, you know. And I'm just a gluttonous bastard. I love things that have a bit of a story behind them, and you can meet the people behind it and find out why it tastes different and what they're growing and why they're doing it. And so I think that's that's
where we came from. Like, we all came from that.
Yeah.
You know, it's Okay, enough about farming. I hate that farming became a political issue. That's what I hate, because talking about farming
everything
is
gets
awesome.
it in turns. Everything gets it in turns. The world
Terrible.
runs in circles. I mean, at some point or another, everything gets a hard time. I mean, like what was it? Even
there
cucumbers.
was a guy.
Cucumbers try to kill us. Yeah.
Yeah. The cucumber, yeah. There was a guy in Holland saying like it's always a rat race between first we call it like the cities, they come after the farmers, and then it'll turn around, the farmers come after the cities, and it's like a never ending circle, because now in the cities they're deciding what the farmers should do, and then the farmers are eventually gonna like say no more, and then they'll turn around and they're going to decide what's going to happen in the cities, and then it's going to turn around again.
Yeah. Anyway, and now for something completely different.
Let's talk about a knife.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us about your class with Tobias Hangler. How did you like the forge over there, and did you get any kind of new insights into ways of making
Absolutely.
knives?
Well, I've always kind of been a grindstock guy. The guy who taught me knife making was a grindstock guy, and he learned from Bob Lovelace and sort of started making knives when I was a young kid. I grew up with Rory, who lived nearby, making these fantastic knives. So I always had him on a pedestal. And when I kind of got into knife making myself, that's just how they were made. It wasn't from sort of banging hot metal. But 5 minute drive from my house, there's an amazing forge and a very close friend. So I was able to scratch that itch and kind of look into forging and sort of merging those interests. But to be fair, coming from the food background, what's the most efficient and logical way of making something really good in the end? And my attitude is to sort of source things and sort of find that efficient method. And I kind of get the kick out of that, of sort of like improving things. So, but after a period of time, you always want to expand and learn and sort of find your knowledge base. Like I can make Damascus very badly, but I don't want to. It's one of those things I just need to say I know how to do it. And I know where to kind of, but by going over to do the course, was really the ambition to actually learn from a metallurgist and to sort of see where this. And I've fallen in love with Apex Ultra. I think he's really onto something. I think the image and the brand that they have all developed is quite interesting, to kind of have that Apex or the higher kind of grade of sort of high carbon steel aimed for that market. But it's a bitch to work with in respects to hand sanding and everything else. So the laminations, and the fact that the laminations are what catch people's eyes more than anything. So to actually make those steels and work with the rolling mills and the power hammers, that was a lot of fun. And I think that there was, I'm lucky enough that, of course, I was going to Austria, and my German is terrible, and I don't have any, if anything. And luckily, everybody else speaks fantastic English. So I think I think if anything, I think they actually speak better English than I do. so yeah. But yeah, I think that was the good thing. I think to no matter what, it's the little things that I picked up that really blew me away. It's the sort of the workshop layouts and where does he get his glue, and the sort of the size file that he just so happened to, that was just kind of lying around. These little things that actually make our life so much easier, and that you integrate into your own knife making style. When you see that, like if somebody asked you for your tips and tricks, there's so many of the things that I do as a knife maker that I wouldn't even think of mentioning, because it's just, isn't that what everybody else does? So to actually go to a workshop and actually watch somebody else making knives and see the holding the blades and work with a different grinder. I mean, I have a couple of different grinders. They're all kind of based on the same style, but he's the Tobin machine one, and working with the jig for the hollow grindings and all those things, to actually kind of see that, and the misting systems and the compressed air things, and seeing his CNC machine set up, and the heat treating little tweaks. I thought it was quite interesting when we were heat treating the blades, that he was actually putting one blade in, waiting 5 minutes, taking one out, waiting 5 minutes, putting another one in this whole kind of process of keeping the kiln at temperature. while getting everybody's class in the class to actually have it quench and do their blade. There's certain things where you realize, what am I being too uptight about in relation to heat treating? What can I relax the fuck about? And how can I make life easier? What really are the important things? And what makes us stand out, and what can we do better? So that was a huge part of going there. And actually the same happened with Benjamin in his workshop. I think I'd love to actually get out more and visit more people and more places.
It's a great motto, though. How can I make life easier? That's a good one. Because if you do that on everything you do, I mean, your life's going to be pretty easy.
It's true, but then if you oversimplify, then you're the same as everybody else. There are the things that we do perhaps give a shit about, that we should give a shit about and focus on. They're usually the things that make us us. Like I like to think the attention, the detail I put into the handles, and if I just made an oval round handle or like a sort of a typical wah handle, and I just kind of smacked it on, my knives wouldn't be the same.
Very true.
Yeah, so I think we find the fight that we want to fight, that what we want to commit ourselves to be our shining point, and also maybe we get that from feedback. Maybe we get that from our customers.
I'd like to compliment you on your packaging. The way that's just next level shit, man. I love that.
Do you have one of his knives?
No, I wish.
Whenever you want. There's one of the knife packaging was interesting, because to me, selling food was an interesting kind of like that is part of the process. And I liked the element of the funny thing is that point of opening something. If you have retail therapy, I mean, fucking I do. I mean, who doesn't skip a heartbeat when the old the box arrives from the postman and something new arrives? You get excited about it. And then that process of opening, and remember as a kid, that game where the package would go around and you open a layer and you open a layer and you open a layer and you open a layer. So it started with me actually, when I first started making knives, probably about, 15? I was but not the knives for 15 years, but I was fucking around for a little bit before that. But I made a knife for a friend, and he was about to fly home, and we said, how do we actually get it home without it stabbing through your clothes and through his bag? And what happened was, as a sort of a present for my wife, I got a full art kit, a sort of an easel and some leather canvas and all the oils and brushes, which never was going to be used, but it was a nice idea at the time.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. So what happened was that we said, all right, we're going to wrap it up in a bit of canvas. So I cut a square of canvas and I put the knife in the center of it. And at the moment that I was about to wrap it up, he asked me what was the name of the wood again. And it threw me back to being a young kid, and I kind of traced the outside of the knife, and I kind of said what the steel was, and I wrote down what the handle was, and I started kind of pointing arrows, just like the old school days of graphics design and everything else. And I saw it, and I was like, ooh, this is very fancy. And I felt very proud of myself, and then I wrapped it all up, and I put it in. And then over the years, that just adapted and grew, because what you have is your legend of what materials you're using, and in my case the knives are always different. And then I found sort of a unique way of wrapping paper up and sort of folding it in on itself multiple times and wrapping that around the blade to be the equivalent of a puncture proof kind of edge protector, so that's recyclable. The canvas goes around that, and then for shits and giggles and to take the piss, because I make salamis, I tied it up and trussed it up like a salami. So do you know the way you take a Toscane or a saucisson sec and you see them tying the salamis up? I literally tie them up with butcher's twine the exact same way. And then I had these crimps made for the salamis that became a pain in the ass. We stopped using them, but minimum order for those was 10,000. So I have little gubbine crimps, which are like security seals for containers. And that goes on the bottom. And then I just put like crepe paper on the outside. So like I said, that element of layers, with the absolute logic of it being kind of all recyclable, all reusable, and all at hand. And in some ways, they become a pain in the ass. I mean, I'll spend 2 days after a knife drop wrapping all the knives up, doing it perfectly. And God, there's so many easier ways of doing it. But that point of the reveal and the whole process of that,
that's important.
And the giving a shit and the hand,
exactly.
and actually it has to be me. I couldn't ask somebody else to do that. you know, and I can't spell for shit. Every so often, 1 in 10 knives, I have a typo. I spell loveless wrong, or I'll spend nickel. You know, I'll put the E in front of the L instead of after the L. I have dyslexia, so I kind of fuck up beautifully every so often. So I catch myself with typos. Luckily, Tipex is usually at hand. But there you go. That was the packaging, and it helps. I think those kind of things really do help. The personal touch is probably the biggest thing I'd say to grasp onto there.
Yeah, it makes the whole experience a whole lot more personable, and it ties in your love for cheese and meat and all that kind of stuff that you do on the side.
Well,
ties everything all together.
By connection association. If I was a complete stranger and I made the knives and I came out of nowhere and I had my knives all there, they wouldn't sell. I think it's just the fact that over the years, the friends that I've met in the food world have used my knives. A friend has given a knife to another friend. Somebody else has sort of bigged me up. I've met a famous chef at another event. We hit it off. He used a knife. He's big on Instagram. Whatever this whole sort of way. I mean, if anything, persistence is usually the most important tool to getting your name and your product out there. I mean, it's in the food world. I mean, like that's it. I mean, I've seen so many food companies come and go purely because they see the logic. And to be fair, in the food world, you either have to make a small amount of something really good or make a large amount of something really cheap. And that's only part of the battle. Because if it's really good, you have to play a much more bigger branding game and be much more out there. And if it's something cheaper, it's again, it's the same thing. It's just probably getting it to market as quickly and as easily as possible. So I don't need to preach to any of you guys about this. I suppose you're all masters of your own area, and you know the pitfalls and everything else. I mean, in the modern day, usually people are buying something because of the person and not just because of the product. But that's amplified by perhaps reputation and everything else. If you need a slight reason to get it, and then as long as you're not a dick or an asshole, it really helps.
Yeah. How did you get into making that handle style that you have with the little step up? Is that something that you just came up with for comfort, or?
Yeah, two things kind of come to mind. I mean, I could bullshit until the cows come home about this, that, and the other. There is some logical to it. I mean, the whole thing is it's designed for both pinch grip and regular. It lines up the knuckles, and the step was designed, and I've often referred to it as a pinky anchor. Your pinky fits into the slot in behind that step if you're pinch grip, and it kind of holds you in place, and it stops you, because I have a bad habit of climbing the blade and sort of having two of my fingers on top of the blade and getting calloused and everything else, because you just want to kind of climb up on top of those very large knives that I was using when butchering and chopping things in the kitchen. So I said, right, how do I actually kind of stop that? And then for the laugh, when I was in my early days making knives, I made a knife which had a step for each finger, which was just one of my mad experiments. One of my mad sort of like, sure, why the fuck not? Let's make this. And then the kind of the point that came to mind is that everybody has a different hand, big hands, small hands. So like this is a totally bespoke kind of knife. I mean, what works for me is not going to work for my wife or somebody with a smaller hand. So I kind of said, how do you simplify that, create the step? The one thing that's really important here is that visually it gives an element of detail. Multiple size hands can actually work with it. And so there's a visual beauty, there's a sort of the shadow effect that's created by it when you're looking at the knife in a certain way. And it just fucking works. There is ergonomics involved. And I mean, like half the time you're not really holding it in such a way that it's in your fingertips. Only part of the time will you hold the knife properly like that. Half the time you never hold the knife properly. You're doing everything if a sharp knife is in place. But there's two good phrases. A friend of mine, Rory, kind of said, you should be able to pick up a knife in the dark and know which way is up. I think that's a very logical kind of thing. I mean, literally, if you're blindfolded and you know where the knife is and you can pick it up, you should automatically know where you are and what's happening with this tool in your hand. And I suppose the rest is kind of balance and just kind of comfort. And the step has moved around. In my earlier knives from like 10 up to like 10 years ago, like the step was fucking massive and it was kind of further back, and it's just become smaller and sort of more subtle. And I think that just makes it much more approachable to kind of multiple shaped hands. But yeah, I'm not going to say anything more than it literally is just now a signature thing. I used to make the knives in kind of a classical style in the Stepped, and I pushed entirely towards it because fuck it, I did want people to sort of look at it and see the shadow or the outline of the knife and know exactly who made it. But it had to work. And I think the fact that a lot of the guys I've made knives for, if I have a friend who's a chef and I see perhaps an Instagram post or I see a picture or I go over there to meet him, and years later that knife I know he's had for years is on the butcher's block, or it's knackered and worn, or there's an Instagram post with that used knife in there, just not even if it's center stage, if it's just subtly in the background, I know I'm fucking doing something right because I know that guy has 20 knives, and the fact that that's the one he reaches out for, means a lot. And that just keep focusing on that, keep improving, and that's kind of hopefully where I am. I think there's enough. I've probably made about 5,000 knives now, easily, if not more. And so I think there's kind of enough feedback and a few things like that to kind of boost me into kind of like say I'm not doing something stupid. But yeah, visual is one thing. There has to be the practicality as well.
I always wonder about that. I mean, that was an awesome explanation, and it makes a lot of sense. But for some knife makers, I think it has a lot to do with the tooling they have. Yeah, they have a certain belt grinder or whatever, and that's what they can accomplish with what they got.
Oh shit, yeah. I mean, life would be a lot easier without that step. But that's helped me. You just find the reasons. Like I work a lot with those Utenized wheels, the deburring wheels. They're usually the 25 mil wide rubber wheels that have either different. There's a course. There's a 9SF or a 7SF, and like they're basically rubber wheels with abrasion in them. And they look like stone wheels from grinders, but you can put rouge on them, and I can use those to clean up in corners. The harder one I use to get rid of the occasional scratch up in the bolster area of the steel blade. They're like my go-to. It's the most used item in my workshop after the grinder. So I found a lot of tricks and things, to kind of help me out. But really, the rotary platen, J-Flex belts. And on the rotary platen, just with the I can just get into those corners and clean them as much as possible. Rub it off the deburring wheel, clean that up using rouge on the wheel, and then there's a small little bit of hand sanding, probably about 5 minutes of hand sanding with a knife, and it's finished. And it just that. So you just find your means to take the pain away.
Yeah, it's a very distinct handle design. I mean, everyone in the knife making community is able to recognize one of your knives, and it's also very cool because it works with different styles of handles. It works with a round handle, with an octagonal handle, with facets on top, round at the bottom. And so it's a very versatile.
Well, that was the interesting
style.
thing was that I found everybody was going through that whole faceting kind of stage. Everybody was kind of embracing it, and. I think it was Sam Dunn was over, and I had literally been drawing it out and playing with the idea, and ended up just driving. I mean, I freehanded it entirely. I'm not somebody to actually. I take risks. I happily take risks. I'm a bull in the china shop. I don't mind if I break something trying to work it out. I think that the means to sort of finding the solution is usually to confront the problem, fuck up. Try and turn around the fuck up, and I'll either find a different solution or make a new product, or I work better under that kind of pressure. And maybe that comes from my dyslexia. But the I think that's basically the kind of the process for all the things. Like I just finished making a scalloped blade. That was another thing. I'm kind of proud of that as well. It's kind of a unique scalloping process for the kind of the on the knife using Sumo-Nagashi blades. So, and yeah, a lot of these things come from just probably having fucked up a blade and like, while I'm here, I'm probably going to chuck this out. Let's try something, mad, and no pain, no gain. Just go ahead first into it.
Mad scientist type shit.
Why not?
Yeah,
I think that comes from food. Like if the worst thing that happens is you it's not good and you don't do it again. But I feel like it helps more than it hinders to be brave and to just head first. I mean, I've thrown a lot of knives in the bin. I break them and everything kind of happens. But I think my gung-ho thing makes me more productive and faster. So that's time not lost, usually, if that makes sense.
It does. In the creative realm, there's a lot more of that.
Yeah. I also have a fantastic Jiminy Cricket. I mean, my wife will tell me that something is stupid or it's ugly.
That's very important.
And it is somebody out there, because I'll come back and I'll be as cocky as fuck. It's the next biggest thing. This is the shit. I'm fucking superhero, and I'll get a sideways look from like, I don't like it. I don't see it. I don't. And yeah, everybody's allowed to agree and disagree. And I think,
but she's usually right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn her. Yeah, damn her and her logic. Yeah, it's true. But hey, that's why we pair off.
Very recognizable.
True. I think yeah, that it's kind of fun to kind of find that. But then hey, I'm also painted into a corner in some ways. But I mean, I can always fall back and do different things, but why not celebrate that sort of element? And I mean, what was interesting was a long time ago, I was asked to do a knife set. I mean, I was always the rebel. I never want to make sets and pairs. And if somebody asks me, I very begrudgingly will ever make knives if somebody wants all the handles made out of the same material. I mean, that just feels like a pain in the ass. Because like I just need to work. Do you know what I love to do is I kind of grind all the blades. I have everything. There's always multiple steels. I've got a couple of Dama steel. I've got a couple of Apex Ultra. There's some mono steel. There's paring, petty, bread knives, carvings, and each month they're all completely different. And there's a point when the blades are ground. I'll put them on the table, and I have a cupboard full of all the handle material, and nearly all the kind of handle materials are already mounted on G10 or cut to size and ready to go. And there's this funny point where you kind of are an exciting point for me when you can just like, okay, I'm going to put this on this, and I can cherry pick the handle materials, and like it comes from a wonderful place of knowing that I'm not actually having to do a bespoke order. There's only ever a couple a month, but what is kind of going on is that this blade is so bling, it's so wonderfully over the top. I better play it down with the handle. Or this blade is a monosteel, I can be a bit madder with here. I've always wanted to use this material. You know, anything that's an experiment, you know, I probably won't use the fanciest blade. So that point of pairing, and where you're actually kind of calling out, like sometimes you're saying that the blade calls out to the material, and it can depend on the mood in that day. I usually sleep and I pair them up, and then the next day come back in, and if my mind's still in the same place, then I'll proceed to put them together.
That's the best advice for everyone. Sleep a night on it.
Yeah. But that's
so you
that basically the fun period.
You choose the handle, like is that always in after you've
finished the blade? Yeah, I kind of do a batch work. I'll work in sort of 6s and 8s and things like depending on how complex the blade is. So I'll kind of try and grind out 6 Damasteel blades or 8 big Sumonagashis, or I'll do sort of 10 bread knives. I'll do things in waves that I feel is like from lunchtime until afternoon. I'll have them literally finished and ready to go.
That's quite interesting though, because most knife makers we've had on here, and the most stories you always hear is like they have the entire knife like in their head already. And you're basically saying like I really don't. I'm trying to be as productive.
I'm trying to be as productive as possible. I mean, like if anything, I'm kind of making anything up to about nearly 30 something to 40 knives a month. And considering I have like kind of, I'm running the smokehouse, the cheese, the farm, all these other things. Like knives a part-time job, and I'm making a knife a day. And I think that comes from batch work, but in small enough batches and waves.
But the efficiency comes from your food background.
Definitely. I think that's why the handle materials are all pre-prepped. I do blade
planning.
I have about 60 to 80 blades already heat treated and ground and ready to go. Heat treat, cut out, heat treated and ready to go. So I can just pull 2 of those, pull 4 of these, pull 8 of those. I'll kind of do things in batches and waves, and there comes from a bravery, perhaps, of knowing that they'll all probably sell. And what's really more exciting is to make each month kind of perhaps cannon fodder for Instagram and for a wide selection to kind of make things interesting. Because I definitely be more efficient if I banged out just one knife and sort of like, I ask people like, shall I make 100 paring knives? Shall I make 100 knives exactly the same? But I think I'd go mad, and I don't think it would make things exciting.
I think in the food world, it comes from because when preparing food, there's only so much you can prep. You know, like a long time before, and now you like in your knife making adventure, you can prep like a lot and still be creative.
But a baker will make multiple loaves.
You enjoy it so much.
Yeah, like a baker will make multiple loaves and cakes and bread rolls and things like that. You know, a butcher will make multiple flavors of sausage, but you know, all those sausages. You know, he's doing the butchering on Monday, the curing on Tuesday, the sausage making on Wednesday, the wrapping on Thursday. You know, but there is multiple flavors involved within the efficiency of having worked with steps. But that's the kind of the thing. I don't know. I find myself just latching onto that. There's one wonderful guy, Kees, who's Dutch. he lived here.
Oh, what such a Dutch name.
Kees Kramer, and he lives in Ireland. He's lived out here his entire life.
Kees Kramer.
But like, he helps me out, and he hasn't befriended the grinder, but he has wonderful patience and skill towards sort of all the hand sanding and the fine materials. So I think I've never had really a full-time person. There's always somebody who just helps in the background. And actually what's lovely is that over the years, multiple people have kind of come here to make knives, and they've all gone off to become knife makers themselves. And I think that, but it is good to have. I always, there's one other thing that I suppose that the stems is that I always know that no matter what, if there's a crisis that comes up in the food, the cheese, the smokehouse, the farm, I have to be able to stop what I'm doing and walk away and prioritize that, because there's about 20 people who work in Gabin. So knife making is entirely based around the fact that no one's missing, nothing's broken, and there isn't an emergency that needs my attention. And if all the things are in place, then I can make knives in the afternoon. So I think that's something that kind of interesting in some ways. That the first thing, the one thing that gets the most attention is the knives. Well, it feels like to me from social media and everything else, but it's the least priority and what I should put my, maybe not the priority, but it's the one thing I have to drop no matter what if something else comes along.
So how much time do you get to spend in the shop?
I get up at
average?
about 6:30. I'm probably land into the workshop around 7 o'clock after checking emails and everything else. I'll work around until probably, everybody else they start making the cheese at 6:30. The smokehouse starts at 8, and the farm is all the time. But I suppose everybody... in the mornings I do the run around everywhere and make sure everything's kind of okay. So I'll call into everybody and check how things are going. And because everything's on the farm, I'm always just a phone call or text message away. So I'll stop what I'm doing and kind of run over. But it's amazing how the mobile phone has made everything possible to actually run a business from a phone while grinding, so checking emails and doing everything and running everything while still being efficient in some way. The one thing I can't do is sit behind a computer. I go cross-eyed and I'll slowly go insane. And, whatever I feel that we're not good at, we need to kind of delegate. And I'm surrounded by the most incredible people who make life possible. So I suppose what'll happen is on most days I do find myself actually probably working from 7 until the first couple of hours, dealing with things and maybe getting back into the workshop after lunch, and then I have to be home usually around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when I'm kind of catching up with kids and doing stuff there. So and I kind of work on the weekends as well. What happens is, because my kids, they love coming down to the farm when they're not in school, so the kids kind of running around. So luckily, I suppose the adventures, instead of having to take them in a car to somewhere, they can be running around. And like, I have 5 kids, so they all entertain themselves. I think that definitely helps. I think things were a lot harder years ago, but now that they're of an age where they're now building.
I was just going to mention that, when they're really young, they over here they always say like you have like 1 kid is that's okay, 2 kids manageable, 3 kids is like having like 40 kids.
Well, they always say
It's
3
suddenly
kids.
like-
You're running out of arms with 3 kids.
Yeah, but it's true. It's that's such a difference, like between the 2 and 3, and they say I don't have experience of that like the difference between 3 and 4 or 4 or 5 is not that big.
No, I think you're already
the-
committed after 3. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the car just needs to get bigger.
yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to. One of my eldest has become a wonderful rower, and we were going to have to go up and stay in a hotel, and we realized that we were going to need to get 3 hotel rooms for
my
us all
God,
to.
yeah.
I know, because I mean, and like that, there's things that do stop us leaving. I mean, like to get into a plane and go somewhere as a family is probably an idea of hell. Luckily, we just live in a beautiful part of the world.
You
But,
do.
Yeah.
I mean, the farm life is just wonderful for kids, man.
Oh, it's rich, but yeah. On a
rich,
funnier
but-
note, I brought them up to the city, and they spent half an hour playing with an escalator, and it was like going to Disneyland. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Escalator. And then after the escalator, we went back to the car park where the car was, and there was an elevator.
It's so
They had
relatable, man.
they had another half an hour playing in an elevator. So like the things that most people take for granted, we get excited by.
Well, I live like on the countryside as well, and whenever I take like my kids to see my parents or anything like that, and they live in like a more crowded area, they don't respect like gardens and stuff. They don't have a clue that you cannot like just walk into someone's garden and stuff. It's very funny. They have no clue what that means,
it's
like
true.
boundaries and stuff. It's just because they don't
one of
know
my
it.
kids at one point peed off the top of the slide in the playground, like literally just peed off it. He's just peeing wherever you want. It's a farm, like. So it's like that was a big like kind of no, we don't
same.
pee in public, darling.
Very funny.
Hicks on tour.
Yep. That's literally what it is. It's very fun to see.
Yeah, I know. And I think they're all the adventures always come. I feel like at a certain point anyway, the school trips and exchanges and these things kind of let you see the world. And then when you get to a point, I mean, I grew up at a point where I didn't go much as a kid, and then you find myself that kind of that teenage years where you just want to travel the world. And I think that's really when you get that chance to kind of get out there and go mad and kind of see the world.
I did grow up in a crowded place and ended up on the countryside. And whenever I like visit my parents or go there, it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel It's just I need the feeling of being able to do whatever the fuck you want on your own land.
To be able to pee wherever you want.
Yeah, or light something on fire, or not that I really want to, but the feeling that I can is enough for me. That's priceless.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But you need the other side. I mean, I've got a couple of city adventures. There's a fantastic food festival called the Big Grill that happens every year up in Dublin. I look forward to that. There's going to be an occasion in London. There's a few other things where you do get to the city. It's great, but they're always small doses. I feel I get my fix after a couple of after 24 or 48 hours. But I desperately
and you
long
need
for
it to be reminded
Yeah.
of how great the farm is.
Oh yeah, well, not great. It's just where I feel more comfortable. There's nothing. I mean, to be fair, each to their own. My sister-in-law
Obviously.
is the most beautiful townie. She knows where every sneaky little gig is, where the best places to eat are, what the little pop-up venue is, what's happening. To her, the city is her playground. And I really respect and love that. And I mean, to me, it's just I know where the swimming holes are, and when the food starts to kind of the mushrooms are about to start coming up, and there's each to their own, and it's about comfort and
I have massive respect also for people that raise their kids like in the city. Where like we can just open the door and just go out and do whatever the hell you want type thing. And they have to do that in a very different way. I
Well,
have much respect
my
for that.
my kids wouldn't last 5 fucking minutes in a city before they probably get run over. I mean, because you know, you ever seen a car in hospital? But I think we get more nervous when a city kid will come, like a city relative will come to stay with us, because
Yes.
you know, it's you have to be aware of your surroundings. I mean, we always give out to the Australians because you know, look, everything in your country wants to kill you, eat you, or bite you, or something like that. But like to them, it's completely fucking normal. You know, like I happily will, you know, all this bullshit that's built up through television, the things you should be afraid of. But just knowing the simple things, like you do lift up the toilet seat before you go for a shit. You know, these are the important things. So yeah, don't piss off a bull, you know, when you walk into a field.
So funny. Yeah.
Albert,
So,
I'm always hit. I was just going to ask Albert because I'm kind of excited. I need to know more about this workshop. I mean, you have the most amazing sort of selection of tools, and you have the workshops and your knife side of things. But is there many of you kind of involved? Do you are you playing a role with other people? And
Yeah, we are two. There's Andy and I, Andy Fellner, and we are running the company together. We both, we each have 50% of the company, and we run it together. So there's two of us.
The knife making how long have you been involved with this? And like, what are your priorities in relation to the sort of the tool making and different factors? Or, I mean, what?
I mean, knife making is the priority, and also the classes, because the classes pay the rent, to be honest. It was the same with a lot of knife makers here in the continent, that the classes are paying the rent. But we're making a lot of steel, because we have now 5 power hammers, and luckily we have a dealer for our steel.
Yeah, who's that?
Right, Keith? So Keith, yeah, you. So Keith buys our steel, but you might have seen one of our tools when you were visiting Tobias' shop.
Which one was that?
Because Tobias has, I think, 1 or 2 knife making vices. We've built.
Yeah,
2 of them. Yeah, that's also a
I saw and was using those, and I think it's fantastic. And the steel I've actually seen. I haven't actually. Actually, did I get some of that?
Yeah, I sent you a piece.
I think off of Keith. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So we've been using your steel, but I think it's just fascinating. And the workshops are something I kind of find quite interesting, because I think maybe I burnt out on people. I think having done farmers markets and everything for so long, I mean, since I was a kid, I mean, my parents exploited me growing up. Like, there's some fucking tourists, go and deal with them, you know, and I'd give them the tour and do everything else, you know. And then I got into farmers markets, and I now I kind of don't. I have less time really for that, but I'm good at it, but I'm maybe turning more and more into a person who wants to be alone. I don't know if that's true or not. But there is, if you are rigged up for it and set up for it, workshops make an incredible amount of sense, because somebody, for the price of a knife, if not more, you know, somebody gets to leave with a knife, but the experience and everything like that is fascinating, and you can turn over a lot. And actually, my eyes are opened. Where I would have taken the piss out of somebody doing workshops, I'm now like, actually, you've got your fucking head screwed on. I think there is an incredible amount of efficiency, and if you have the systems in place, there is something very efficient about workshops and education.
Yeah, and you also learn a lot when you're doing a lot of knife making classes. For one reason is that you get to meet so many different and very interesting people at times, and they have these small tips and tricks, especially if they're used to working with metal. They always have some special tricks that they share, and then you become very efficient at solving problems, because someone always screws up something, and then you have to fix it right away, because you have with the Damascus forging classes, you have 3 days, and the people that travel like 500-600 kilometers for this class, so they really want to leave with a knife after these 3 days. So you have to fix the problem right away if they screw up. So And of course, you become very efficient.
Yeah.
Because if you're the last class we did with 9 people, and we had to forge the steel on Friday and build 9 knives Saturday and Sunday. So you become very fast at grinding and gluing up handles and stuff. So it actually helps a lot also with your own knife making then.
Yeah. I have a funny story. When I was farming in New Zealand when I was about 17 years old. I went over for part of the agricultural certificate you have to do in Ireland involves 3 months work placement. So I went to New Zealand, and at the end of the trip, there was a place in the South Island that was doing workshops. You could go and make a knife for a day, and that was one of the first time I'd actually made a knife. But I always remember to this day, it was a place called Barrytown. And you kind of the first day was grinding everything out, sticking on some handles. He did the vast majority of the job, I think, for most people, because if he saw anybody suffering, he just took over to make sure there's nobody's lagging behind. But at the very end of the class, I mean, each knife was the equivalent of, it was half axe, half knife. I mean, there was no fucking edge geometry whatsoever. It was a knife-shaped object, but everybody had a lot of fun, and that was the whole thing. So he brings everybody into the kitchen, and he gives everybody a glass of what he called Barry Pain, so his version of champagne. And it turns out his wife was in the back taking the cheapest white wine they had, and he was using a soda stream to carbonate
the
bubbles.
Brilliant.
And he referred to it as Barry Pain. So everybody got their glass of champagne at the end of the course. And I've always loved this idea. And years later, I saw somebody had gone into the banking district in London. And they had 2 glasses of, in one hand, there was, I think, the equivalent of sort of carbonated Blue Nun, whatever white wine was. And the other one was a very good champagne. And this was in the peak and the boom of the banking period. And it was a 50-50 draw. It was asking complete strangers in the middle of the banking district which they preferred. And it was a tie. So there you go. Bubbly white wine, eh? So that's the end of the story.
It's a good story.
What kind of steel do you have from us, Fingal?
I was actually just one of the billets I bought when I was browsing. I think this, because I probably was looking predominantly, I had to say I was just getting some of the Apex Ultra laminates. And then I had some of there was some of the other ones on display there. But I think that was last year. But that was the ones I've got. But how many different types are you making?
Damascus bought, I don't know, 10, 15, something like that. We make a lot of Apex stainless cladding.
Okay.
So Apex core stainless cladding. Then we make our standard Apex Damascus is 200 layers outside as a cladding and Apex core. And then we make all kinds of patterns, raindrop. Then we make Kumai with Apex core. We recently made a Kumai with 200 layers Damascus on the outside and Apex core, which was a struggle because we ruined so many billets before we managed to forge one out successfully. So that was a lot of work.
This is with the ATCRV cladding and...
No, with the 200 layers Damascus.
Okay, 200 layer,
copper, diffusion barrier and Apex core. And if you ruin a billet like that, it's a lot of time you've wasted because you have to do the Damascus first for the cladding. So that's a lot of work.
I think it is fast. I wanted to kind of get, I always had a fascination with feather Damascus. I don't know why. I was always kind of drawn to it. And I think it's one of those things where I was kind of nervous of playing around with Damascus too much. I was afraid of getting obsessed with it because, as I've discovered in anything that I kind of really get connected to, I kind of immerse myself with it. And I was afraid of that obsession because I had found the efficiency of probably being able to buy in and source. And my kind of attitude is to actually be able to go to people like yourself and actually buy really good materials. You do what you do really well. I have my things that I do very well. I have somebody I can get the handle material from. I'm not going to grow the tree to kind of cut the wood. And I think that if you look at the Japanese, who probably have been at this for so long, their state of efficiency comes from everybody maybe breaking that even further to like, I just make handles and I just sharpen and I just, forge the blade and I finish the blade. But between them, they can make hundreds of knives a week, whereas I can make 12. And somebody who goes even further down that, and makes a very high-end knife could probably spend weeks making one knife. So I think I kind of drew the line, and I'm just grateful for people like yourself out there that are actually kind of making these great materials and allowing us to be very diverse. And I think, and I think that diversity is probably what gets me excited. Sometimes I fight with myself. I mean, I do find that by having multiple steels, there's multiple chances to fuck up. If you have one thing and you just do it well, you hear, Jeff Fader often going on about, have one steel and know it really well. But I think with modern technology and good kilns and a sort of a system in place of knowing cryo and heat treats and tempering cycles and everything like that, I have and actually having the backup of a Rockwell tester, you're less likely to fuck up, but it just keeps the soul happy, I think, to be able to have this variety and I've yet to kind of, I mean, that horrible question about what are your favorites. I mean, I know there's probably what's available to us the easiest, but I think sometimes are we drawn more to the steel that's easier to work with over perhaps the higher quality? I mean, we could all work with 4V and MagnaCut, which is supposed to be a better knife, but fuck it, are they hard to work with? But they do make amazing knives. So that balancing act. And I often make this reference where when some people come to the workshop, I explain, have you ever heard of an organoleptic chart?
No.
An organoleptic chart is when you draw on a piece of paper like a cross, north-south, or like a compass, north, south, east, west. But it's salty, sour, sweet, savory. And if each one of those on the cross is 1 of 10, then you can say if you eat a cheese and it's 6 in saltiness, it's 3 in sourness, it's 5 in bitterness, salty, sour, sweet, savory, you can draw flavor as an image, and you can suddenly give yourself a representation so that every time you're tasting something, you can mark down on your scale where things are and give yourself a visual representation of what something tastes like. And this also can happen in the steel world, and we've often seen the charts with hardness, edge retention, toughness, ease of sharpening, stainless. There's multiple factors that you can kind of put into that. And the one thing I've loved about steels is that there's very few steels that can kind of accomplish everything. You often sacrifice one to gain in the other, and then amplify that with heat treatment, where you can manipulate the high points of each steel, or at least play with them. So there, I think that's something I've merged again, the food world and the steel world, and I kind of find myself probably thinking what's great idea on paper, and suddenly becoming a knife maker, realizing the steels I love more and more are the ones that I can kind of manipulate and work with me at a pace that I enjoy. I mean, I like using 14C28N as my kind of rudimentary steel, the sort of RWL34, which is, CPM 158. What's the CPM? It was the before RWL 34, but there's so many different steels. But I think I'm a late bloomer to high carbon steel. I had a lot of bad luck with carbon steels in the beginning, and I found that they weren't hardening for me. And I think as I got older and slower and more careful, I actually found out and gained much more of a respect for carbon steels over stainless steel. That's probably a phase I'm going through at the moment.
Which one did you use back then when you had problems with high carbons?
52100. Okay. But I was buying in some 52100 that was fucking riddled with alloy banding.
Okay.
It was I got it through the UK at the time. And what was happening was that there was a huge amount of alloy, and it's stunning. It looks like Woots, but I had to do a lot of normalizing cycles and much higher. So actually, that's when I first made contact with Morocco, because I was listening to Knife Talk, and I asked him for some help, because everybody loves 52100. They all talk about it in America, but I think the batch that I got was just obviously got a lot of abuse in the rolling mills. And I think just developed the alloy banding, and I could never understand. And I of course, I fucking was a greedy pig and I bought a giant sheet. So I was like, I was stuck with this giant, very expensive sheet of 52-100 that I felt I had to use for multiple years. Yeah. So I never got the cross. But yeah, I think that's one. And then I found that I was also getting some clad steels. This is about 10 years ago. I was getting some clad steels. And it's very hard to use a Rockwell tester on cladding. So you're just relying perhaps trying to roll the edge after you've ground the blade to check if it's gone well. I mean, here's a question. If you do have a Sanmai, a Sumanagashi, or any of these things that has a kind of a core material, can you use a Rockwell tester? If you grind away carefully the cladding, can you confirm on a test piece the Rockwell, or is there a point below a certain thickness that the Rockwell tester won't work?
I mean, there is a point below a certain thickness, but it should work with a. If the core is not too thin, it should work. It depends on the thickness of your core material, but usually it's like a millimeter or something, and that should be enough. Yeah. There's a formula in Larry and Thomas' book, based on which you can calculate the depth of the indentation the diamond makes. So, but it should. I think it should work if the core is like a millimeter or something thick. I think that's plenty.
Yeah. It's just. I suppose anyway. That was my learning curve. I think I embraced stain. I think maybe because of my bad luck with a couple of blades, I embraced stainless steel because the funny thing was I always had a kiln, or I always had a forge kiln to actually heat treat, and I had access to liquid nitrogen. So I said, "Fuck it." There's actually. It's giving me the result, and the clients I had wanted perhaps the sort of the less carefree knife or the less hassle. And do you know what? I still think to this day the majority of my customers actually enjoy stainless, and I think my very much so knife loving or knife nerd kind of type, people like myself. I mean, most of my knives are high carbon steel, but I think that maybe there's a resurgence in carbon steels, but I think I had a couple of occasions where customers, you tell them to not put the knife in the washing machine and not get it wet, but the greatest line in the world was a friend was visiting and put it in the sink, or my sister was over. It's the same thing. So it's inevitable at some point or another the knife's going to get sent back to you to get repaired and fixed, and I always feel bad about having to charge for that. So yeah, I was just like, fuck it, stainless steel.
when we do mono steel blades, we always do stainless. Also Sandvik 14C28N. That's our go-to cheaper version for stainless steel, and then RWR third.
It works. It's a wonderful
it's amazing.
Steel. Sometimes sometimes I see I send some out to get heat treated. And there's a little shadow of like you can see a little bit of a pattern in behind the steel. It's much more. You have to be much more precise with the holding time in the kiln. I think if you go either side, you'll probably get. I don't think alibanding is the correct word, but sometimes you can see if you very finely polish the blade, you can see a sort of a banding pattern in it. But as a performance steel, it is fantastic. Not as stainless, but I mean, I love the ABL was my go-to before 14C28N.
But isn't that almost the same steel? That's very, very similar.
I think 12C27 is closer.
Okay.
I could be
okay.
But I've never used 12C27 myself. I think they're supposed to be closer. I think if anything, 14C28N is supposed to be a little bit more superior.
It is because it's the successor of 12C what's it called?
12C27.
12C27. 14C28N is the successor of the other one. So it's supposed to be superior. But I mean that's our cheaper version, and then the more expensive version is RWR34 for stainless knives. Which is also very good steel, but it's expensive compared to Sandvik's.
It is. I think the powdered metallurgical steels, they definitely are. But I mean, I find them beautiful for mirror polishing. But then again, I have issues with mirror polishing. The fact that I can do it, and it's you have to do it for say Damasteel to kind of get the best result from the pattern. But I think. To me, it's kind of funny. Every time I've made a mirror polished knife, it's knowing when to fucking stop. I mean, no matter how much you polish it, there's always something else. And then that one time that somebody has a knife that they scratch, it's like keying a car. You know, somebody runs with a key down the side of a new car. It's like that is the most painful moment of all time, because you have to look at that fucking thing and it's going to stand out. But yeah, hey, look, is it a flex more than an efficiency?
Yeah, that's why we don't do mirror polishes on monosteel blades.
Yes. Although I found some great tricks. Have you ever? I've used those. Do you know, like the 75 mil diameter kind of buffing wheels? Which you can get wet and dry sandpaper versions for those. Yeah. And I've attached sandpaper to the oscillating. Do you know the oscillating blade cutters, the multi tools? Yeah. I've kind of used those, and you find all these methods, but I think you find tricks for it. But this is the thing with the I think with the core material that I was buying through Keith, I'm pretty sure now it was yours. That was that with the size of the core material, you know, you do have to get. I suppose. What's your preferred finish? If the core is quite big on that, what is the point of sort of? Is it a hand sanding?
I mean, it depends. When we're doing classes, the finish is 600. When we're doing our own knives, we go up to 5,000 at times. So it depends.
Yeah. I think the main thing is consistency and finish. I mean, if you do have a steel like that, I mean, I've fallen in love with you know, the Scotch-Brite belts. Mm-hmm. And they do great things with stainless steel belts, but they're not quite the same. And it doesn't give a sexier result with high carbon steel blades, which are then put into an etch. I feel it just almost lifts your flaws. And that's when you have to find like the hand sanding or other methods. You either have to almost mirror polish and then etch, or actually go for a very consistent hand sanded finish. And hey, look, these are all things that actually make them stand out even more and probably to celebrate more. But here's a question for you. Do you find that actually a carbon steel blade that actually isn't finished to a certain standard is more prone to rusting than a much more finished high carbon steel blade?
I think so, yes.
Finished as in smoother. Mm-hmm. What's your cutoff point?
What do you mean, grit-wise?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't do high carbon monosteel plates. So, but with the Damascus, we go up to, as I said, like 2,000, 2,500, 5,000. But we don't do high carbon monosteel plates. All our monosteel plates are either Sandvik 14C28N or RWR34. And there you don't have any, with those steels, you don't have any problems with rust.
Oh yeah, but you'll have easily 1 centimeter, if not more, 2 centimeters of a core material if you've got a very thin edge geometry behind the apex on a core steel.
You mean with laminated steel, or
yeah.
So if we have a stainless cladding on the outside and a apex core.
Oh, I think more or less. I suppose. Yeah, it was kind of more the level of finish. Is on a scientific level, if you submerge or abuse a knife that has a coarse grit finish, the sort of the 400 grit finish compared to perhaps going higher than that, will you actually find, that there could be more tarnish or more? But look, I think that the knives over age will sort of develop their patinas anyway. Yeah, it's a visual aesthetic is really the answer in the end.
If we're talking grits, the coarser the grit, the bigger the surface area, the more prone to rust, right? I think that's the reasoning behind it. That's why mirror polished blades do better with respect to rust than like satin finished blades.
Yeah. On the counter flip of that, then I suppose, is there a point of suction onto the knife, and would you find that something sticks more to a mirror polished blade than it would to a sort of a?
That's a good question. We had the exact same discussion when Ben Camon was on, and Ben's point was that it might depend on the food you're cutting.
Yes.
So with certain kinds of,
I think you're not chopping fast enough if it's sticking to it.
No, but wet food might behave differently than dry food or vegetables and stuff. So it might depend on
the fibrous. Yeah. I think that this is something that's opened my eyes. I think it might be a weird thing to say, and I hope it doesn't come across as being an asshole thing to say. But I think as my knives became more expensive and maybe more looked, sought after, even if they weren't my fancy knives, what I found was that they were being looked after more by the people who bought them. And what was funny was that the cheaper the knife, or the knife you didn't care about, or wasn't a handmade knife, or you didn't buy, or was gifted, or whatever like that, you would abuse more. And the funny thing is that once my knives I got at a certain point, I started making my knives thinner and thinner, the edge geometry thinner in many cases. And what was happening was that they are always going to be more of a pleasure to cook with. But at the same time is that in the wrong hands, probably more easier to damage, in the wrong hands of hacking and slapping and twisting and sort of things like that. And I think that's just and I suppose somebody I really want to put on pedestal for actually opening my eyes to edge geometry in many ways is Benjamin Camone and I suppose Tobias. What's happening is that I'm seeing so much more. And do you know who's doing amazing things with it over here is Eric Gullickson. And there's number of people are doing this with, and fucking flying close to the wind of actually having a razor blade. You know what I mean? They are a pleasure to cook with and to cut with. But there is this point of what is that fine line between not knowing who your customer is and what they're going to do with your knife and potentially fuck it up and send it back and make it your problem, versus actually knowing that the thinner the edge, the more of a pleasure it is to use. So I don't know if that's something I'd put out there for discussion.
Yeah, that's tough to decide, I think.
I mean, you have to match the material to it as well, of course, the steel.
Ideally, you know your customer, right? So you know...
Well, no, half the time you don't at all.
Yeah, if you only do custom work like Eric, you know almost all your customers, right?
I like his approach very much. Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
The two words,
Also, yes.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Agreed.
Yeah, and he's building a knife for me as we speak, hopefully.
Cool.
So, but if you don't know your customer, I mean, I don't know how to deal with that. Maybe write a note with every knife. Say, this is almost a razor blade. Be careful. Thin edge geometry makes for a good knife, but it's also easier to damage. So it's the same with everything. If you buy Porsche, you can't do a rally with it, but it does pretty well on the street. So
they don't like potholes.
Yeah.
No, I think what I find is that I kind of embraced my hidden tang kind of Japanese influenced kind of knives. I'll often have a thinner edge on those, and I found myself. I was a great fan of the Tekofu VG10 Sumonagashi kind of steel I was buying in. It was something that was very readily available to me when I first started making knives, and that forced me to make a thin edge to actually expose the core. And it's a steel that could also take it in some ways, VG10, but it's a bitch for chipping in the wrong hands. But what I found was that the influence of a hidden tang kind of Japanese knife with a small kind of tang coming out of the knife almost gave the user the feeling like, I have to respect this. This isn't a fucking tree, like an axe for cutting down a tree. And if you have a Western knife that was a 3 mil thick, sort of 8-inch chef knife, hey, I'm not going to mind cutting up, a chicken carcass and going at the bones with this, and that was kind of usually my play on a customer is like, how do you they're both 8-inch knives in many ways. This one is probably more if you're into precise knife work, and this is your more user-friendly Western version. And I think that was usually my approach, was to actually kind of have two styles for two frames of mind.
That's a smart way of communicating with the customer.
Well, without communicating to them, I suppose.
Yeah, without communicating, but somehow communicating with the handle style. That's good, because usually customers in Western Europe are used to Western chef knives. And Western chef knives from like standard company like Zwilling or Dick or whatever, they're very thick, right? And the edge geometry is far from whatever Japanese people make.
More
so
convex and stronger.
Yeah. So, and that's why people are used to these kinds of knives here, and they're not so much used to the Japanese style knives. But you're educating the customer there with your with the handle design, and maybe also tell them, right, be careful, super thin edge, right?
I think so. I haven't found myself really probably having to say that. I do mention in the notes like thin edge geometry, but I hope that the subliminal image is there, and I think that's kind of that's where I'm kind of aiming. But you kind of hitting something there separately is that I'd love to be the fly on the wall in some of the larger knife factories. My eyes have been opened to, I suppose, the machinery that's out there in the world for the burger grinders and the different methods of actually kind of cutting blades. And I mean, there's nowadays you probably have robots that are kind of using probably grinding, belt grinding systems, and then you have the burger grinders, which is probably the more traditional methods. And I found it amazing. Somebody mentioned that the person who uses the machine, the burger grinder, is referred to as the pilot, which I thought was
cool.
I never knew that, and it was very apt. I thought it was a good name or title for the person, and I'd love to be. Yeah. I'd love to go and see one and actually even try it for a while, because it must be a very large machine, and you probably can't see shit because it's all under cutting fluid. But it would be something I'd love to see in action. I mean, I've had some blades made for me in the past, but I think the risk of actually having a large number of blades made for you that could potentially be fucked up and have the plunge lines in the wrong places and ground too thick and ground too thin. Well, too thick isn't a problem. But I've often found if I get a small spec steel, you kind of get something almost unusable back. There is a lot of... I think the pilot was having a bad day. But yeah, still, I'm a junkie for machinery and toys. It is interesting to see how things work. But yeah. There's only a few places really in the world that can do this, and the machines cost hundreds of thousands, I believe. To kind of get a good grinder. And I think they have to be used 24/7 to justify themselves. I'm not sure what the consumables are like or the running costs of those machines, but it is something that I suppose what we have to combat with that as kind of as sort of makers ourselves is the ability to perhaps have that personal touch with the grinding, that the machine doesn't. And the adaptability and the fact that perhaps grinding blades in smaller quantities rather than huge kilns on conveyor belts or whatever else, that we will have. It's if you add all those positives together and the attention to detail we have by working in smaller numbers, you will inevitably end up with a better end product. I think that attention to detail is something that we probably need to accept, and that to actually remain successful in our industry is what are the things we can do. Now, having dabbled in trying to make knives, I mean, I worked with a chef to actually try and get a knife off the ground that was going to be made by somebody else entirely through these larger companies and systems. And it was an eye-opener as to what they could and couldn't do, or what was the bottleneck and how long it was going to take. And in the end, there wasn't as much profit as you think, because really it takes 10 times that in production to actually bring the price point down. But it is still quite interesting to find the positives of as being a handmade.
I think Trollsky did a very good job on that.
In which way?
Trollsky. I think, Keith, you have one of his knives now, right?
Yeah,
I have one of his
folding knives.
He has the
folding knife. The folding knife is very interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
A factory-made folding knife, and it opens up the opportunity for a lot of people to get a Trollsky knife. But it's a factory-made, like Trollsky designed knife, and it's great.
If you're ever talking to my wife, and folding knives are mentioned, that I was doing a lot of research when I was buying all my folding knives. That's entirely why I have a box of them. It's the excuse I gave myself. I'm very much in love with folding knives, and I have to tip the hat to people who immerse themselves into it. And it is a fragile and fascinating kind of world, because you can be deceived into thinking that it's like a printing press for making multiple knives. Not at all. I think we can make more knives as chef knife makers, and bang them out faster and probably sell for the same price than you can actually with these guys who have €100,000 CNC machines with more mistakes and more things to sweat over at night.
Exactly, because when you fuck something up, you can like make a different, like a shorter knife or whatever. Like if a folder guy fucks up, it's like
it's in the
9
bin.
out of 10. Yeah, it's done. Yeah. Like you're done.
What's your go-to pocket knife? Everyone.
Mine?
Yeah.
Nowadays it's the Fader friction folder.
That's it. Oh, good man. Jeff's going to love hearing that.
I know. Yeah.
Is that a pocket knife though? Does it fit in your pocket?
It does. It is fucking huge though. It's so big.
I can never remember the name of what's the Japanese one that it's based on the same design as the sort of the Japanese style with the brass fold over.
Higonokami.
Yeah, I'm not going to remember that again. They are. I've got them. That was all. But what I loved about that was the simple design around the basis of the quality of the steel. It was always really high end steel made in as simple a form as possible. And bloody worked as a tool. Albert, what's your go-to pocket knife?
I have so many. I have one in every pocket. So
we're not supposed to have favorites like children, but at the moment,
Okay, but the one I'm carrying today, let me check. Is a CVV.
Okay.
CVV Raindrop Damascus liner lock with brown micarta scales.
I love it.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah.
Keith, are you a folder man?
I have mostly only folders. I have so many, but there's always two that I carry. One to work is the Custom Knife Factory. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Okay, what's your sort of the pride and joy fancy knife that you won't use on dirty shit, and then what's the one that your beater?
I mean, the Custom Knife Factory is still an expensive knife, but that's my beater. That thing will take anything. It takes a licking and it keeps going. And my favorite one would be from Brian Nadeau, the Evo.
I've got a couple of folding knives that I've kind of picked up, and I love the simpler, more solid kind of plain knives than the bling bling ones. But on my hip, I always have a tactile turn pen and I got the Nkosi, Chris Reeves Nkosi is my go-to knife now. I just can't not take that with me anywhere because it can be both a beater. Well, I had one that's slightly fucked up, so now I have one that's not perfect. I don't mind, and I've got a backup one. Do you know that weird thing? I love spares and backups.
Yeah.
If I know something breaks, and once you know that there's I'm allowed to kind of take it to the edge, and I haven't been able to fuck this knife up. And if I have, I've been able to fix it because luckily I have the other things. But it's interesting. There's elements of the design from both the intricate, clever detail of how they work, to literally down to the absolute feel and logic of the knife. Yeah, so there's a lot to tip the hat on. And I mean, it kind of works differently on the functionality of a folding knife as a tool that actually you use all the time. And then I suppose the different approach of the chef knife that we find that you feed your family with 3 times a day with at home. And what is it about a chef knife that makes you reach out for it? I mean, because we'll probably all have multiple knives on a chopping board. Mm-hmm. And there's knives that are beautiful that we never use, that were maybe sentimental, that we've probably been gifted, or somebody, a loved one or a close friend or a colleague has given us, that has just become something that's always going to be pride of place on the knife magnet. But the knife, there's always just that one knife that you reach out for. And what is it that makes you reach out for that? And yeah, it's rarely the material.
Yeah, that's right. It's the story behind it, mostly, I think.
Story, the feel, the functionality. I think another great pocket knife is the XM18 from Hindra. I really like that you can customize it. That's, I think, something that more pocket knife makers should look into, like being able to change the clip and the handles, and that really people go crazy over that. Like they'll spend $500-600 on a knife and then buy extra handles and extra clips and everything else. You can do screws. And
that's a great idea.
I see that more with the Spydercos. I think the Spyderco kind of latched onto that kind of thing as well. I kind of found Hindra kind of almost verged towards kind of the military style knife, which I was never a fan of. Nope. But again, it's a fucking tank. It's a tank of a knife.
You can't, unbeatable.
That's a good idea, Keith. Damn it. Like a knife configurator, like on a website.
Yeah.
And you can just configure whatever.
I think a lot of people have approached that. I mean, everybody wants Benjamin Camone to have that, but I mean, of course, because of the whole thing, and it's somewhat there. But the Florentine knives has a dynamic of sort of doing that. But I mean, and I think that was originally his game plan in the beginning, and I think in the chef world side of things, that is. Yeah. I mean, I think there is something to be said for that, because I think he had a wonderful point where you could actually even play with the weight and the balance of the knife by tweaking the handle. Yeah. What is your pinch grip? Where is that position? Because if I add a heavier handle material, I'm going to be able to play with that balance. So tip of the hat to him. He's a smart cookie.
But that only works when you're almost 100% machine working everything. When you get into the custom side, it's not feasible. Yeah, true. I think there's something to be said for that. But there's approaches. I find that here's one. I shoot myself in the foot sometimes when I have a certain material and a certain blade. I will stop grinding the handle. My golden rule with my knives is that if I'm holding in a pinch grip, in other words, as close to the bolster as possible on the blade, if you know what I mean, like in that form of the pinch grip. If I have the knife in my hand and I open my hand, the handle should never fall out of the blade should never want to leave my hand, if you know what I mean. Like if I find that pinch point and I open my hand for a second, like as if you're talking to somebody and you gesticulate in that sort of manner or form. If the blade becomes too heavy, I'll smash the handle and go again. The balancing point always has to be in and behind that. And there's always a point where I know visually the handle, I'd love to make it a little bit smaller. It would look the part and be the part and perhaps be a little bit sexier, but the balance has to win. Right, that changes with different materials.
Oh, totally. I mean, you find that literally, I always used 2.5 mil kind of like steel for so long, knowing that the thinner the blade meant the smaller the handle, which is more elegant, more kind of the sexier. I mean, large handle knives to me was just like the rookie mistake of my early years. And I still find myself, if you have, so I think that's, it's an aesthetic and a balance. And I often feel myself that with a hidden tang knife, even with a small tang, that I want to go smaller in places, but there's that risk of actually creating the vulnerability on perhaps a wooden knife, if it's a burl wood especially. And actually, I've had a bit of fun. As a tribute to both, I suppose, Florentine knives and Benjamin Camone, I kind of did some through tang knives. So there is a butt cap and a permanent kind of loveless bolt at the end of the knife, because I find that when I use burl woods for hidden tang knives, and if the knife drops, even years later, if the knife drops on the floor and it's a hard floor, the vibration travels through the blade, and where the tang ends is where the wood will break in the handle. That's always, every knife that's ever been sent back me. I mean, I've had probably about 8 to 10 knives sent back in the past 5 or 6 years. And all of those knives, when they've cracked, was where the tang ends, because of the vibration through the tang blade. And the tang is probably about a 3-inch long tang. And it's not near I always thought it was going to be where the tang doesn't end where my step is, because that would be too painful and too thin an area. It's further back. But I use a lot of stabilized woods. And funny thing is, actually, stabilized woods are kind of like stone in some ways, that they actually are incredibly dense and incredibly hard, but they're also maybe brittle in some kind of way as a form of that stabilization compared to certain woods. But I stopped using intense burl woods for hidden tang knives, and I use those for full tang knives. But by actually having a full through construction with a bolt welded to the tang, and then a butt cap and nut, and then grinding it all down afterwards, I find that I can now go back to using very intense burl woods without that fear of the handle cracking.
How does your handle size compare with Benjamin Camone's? I mean, I was very surprised when I was able to hold one of his knives in person. To me, the handle felt small, but
I think he's got big handles. I think he does. I think they're big handles in places. I think in all the right ways. I mean, look, his knives are perfect and beautiful, and I think well ratioed. And I think what's lovely is that the forging of the blade gives you a very thick tang that very quickly becomes a thin blade with the beautiful kind of geometry around the tip and the top of the spine, near the tip as well. And And I think that we just rough ground the blade that he did for me. But look, he's got so many designs that he can match the design of his handle to the customer's preference. So I can't speak for him. This is definitely more of a question for him. I think what we found is that by rough grinding the knife, we stopped at a certain point where I had enough to work with, where I could take it down. But that definitely means it was probably the same ratio in design, just a different design, in some ways. I can't flaw his design. I think he has... But the clever thing is that full through construction, it brings a bit more density and everything back into the handle. I mean, that density of material, I love working with G10 and micarta and carbon fiber and these things, because they're all very dense materials that allow you to have that counterbalance in the handle. I mean, spalted woods and badly stabilized woods, are incredibly light, and you suddenly find yourself, in trouble if you do want to maintain that kind of weight in the handle. If I answered your question and deviated.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you did.
Yeah.
Are we bringing back the section that was used to be Wanker of the Week?
And I got one.
Do I get accused of being Wanker of the Week? Is by me automatically being here, does that make me Wanker of the Week?
You could be.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Good. There you go. I'll wear that mantle.
Go ahead, Keith. You said you had one. Oh, wait. Press the button.
Welcome to Wanker of the Week.
Do you know who that is, Fingal?
I know the voice. It wasn't Attenborough, was it?
No.
Was it somebody pretending to be David Attenborough?
Was it?
No.
Play it again. Maybe he'll...
David Attenborough, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, the person...
Almost the same.
Welcome to Wanker of the Week.
Owner Kagler? Pretending to be David Attenborough?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, on a Kegler.
Didn't know he had that skill in him. Good man.
We haven't done this one in a while, but it's going back to pretty much the same for me all the time. Shipping is an insane problem. I've changed now to GLS as my shipping partner.
Yeah.
And
Terrible choice.
Yeah, well, I live out in the middle of nowhere in farmland, and I don't have many choices. I have a customer that opted out for home delivery. He pretty much said, if he's not home, you can leave it at this spot. You guys all know you can go online and check that box, leave it at the door, leave it at the neighbors, whatever you want to pick.
Mm-hmm.
So he picked leave it at the front door, and because he works shifts and supposedly they delivered it, left it at the door. He came home and said that he got a notice that it was delivered, but it's not there. And then going back and forth to GLS forever. They pretty much just said because he opted for delivery at the front door when he's not home, that they have delivered it and they are not liable for the package anymore, which is insane because I paid for a service for a package to be delivered to my customer. I didn't say that you could just throw it wherever you wanted to. They didn't fulfill their agreement with me. What they did afterwards with him was something else that has nothing to do with me, and they will not refund me for the lost materials and all that shit, and so I have to send it back out to the customer.
I have that with the food packages. We work with UPS. Luckily, because we move something like a couple of pallets a day of stuff out of Gabin, that we have a good account. So I kind of get good pricing for sending stuff around the place. But I find that with UPS, you have a couple of choices you have to tick. That if you want insurance, you have to declare the values. There is the ability to get signature approval.
Yeah.
And then if you don't tick that, then it's just down to regular delivery. And if then in this case, it sounds like if you didn't require signature approval, then he's fucked with the system in some ways, and you're left in this gray area, and that's a horrible situation to be in. But I've seen with packages, I mean, even here, packages can be left in the wrong place, the wrong family member. I mean, there's a trusting element to couriers, and my heart bleeds for couriers. I think that they have a difficult job putting things off, and I feel it from both sides, meeting couriers all the time and knowing that they help me out in such a way and make so many things possible. But it's where does it all lie when something kind of goes wrong? And that's a difficult situation.
I mean, I think
it's always difficult.
I think the least thing they could do is if you have something like that where you leave it at the front door. I mean, everybody has a phone these days. Why don't they like put it at the front door, take a picture?
I've never known a courier to use the phone. I mean, unless there's actually a reason. The number's there, but they will never call. And it's a free phone call. It's not going to cost anybody anything. I think they just get fed up of calling people around. And they're probably afraid of being asked to do something more. You know, that's the thing. Every time they ring, it makes the job bigger, I think.
No, I mean, just as like a proof of that it was delivered. Put it at the front door, take a picture. Then they have proof that it's been there. And if I question or the thing gets lost, they have a picture to show me. I put it on the front door.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, there is. That's actually a clever thing. I've seen a couple of courier companies take a photograph of where they've left it, and that's proof. That makes so much sense to me. My wife was giving out to me today
because where we live, a lot of times it's way out of the way. I live way out in farmland, so it could be an extra 20 minutes in each direction. And if they're running late, then it's like, okay, I just mark this as delivered and I'll throw it out the window on the way home because I don't have time.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. But then again, I always refer to it's the cost of doing business in this.
But can you charge €1 more on the service of GLS or anybody else for guaranteed signature approval?
I can, and I always do.
Yeah, okay.
You can, but I mean, Matt's selling stuff that's a couple hundred to €1,000.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Sometimes I get an order. Somebody orders one set of G10 handles for €9 and then pays €14 for shipping if it's going to another country. It becomes it just all adds up.
Oh no, I totally agree with you. I just remember that during COVID we were doing a lot more direct sale to people. We opened up a website and people could buy their packet of ribs and their packet of cheese and their 2 packets of bacon and a bit of chorizo. And as soon as we did that, I think everybody else in the world was trying to do the exact same thing at the same time. And we found that if a package didn't get delivered, you know, it would leave with us on Monday and might not arrive until Friday. And that stage, the chill packs had gone and everything was there. Now, the thing was that
fuckery.
It was just as a food product with vulnerable product, we actually said we have to pack this in because I can deliver to a business. I mean, I can send something to America and it'll arrive in a couple of days. But a package of perishable food being delivered to somebody's house up in the Wicklow Mountains might not arrive for 4 days. They would refuse the product and then it wouldn't get back to us for another couple of days and the whole order has to get thrown in the bin and there's no insurance, there's no cover for that and there's no guarantee that it can be delivered within 48 hours.
But I think like nowadays it's better, right? They have like special services for that.
Yeah, but 1 in 100 will still be a fuck up and you have to wear that, you have to eat that. So I mean and that's we have the luxury of having the service. I mean the post office and everything else like that, you know, it's all these things are incredibly efficient, but I think that the you just have to eat that whole thing of the perishable things because the courier is going to refuse to give you guarantee delivery.
That's what I meant with it's the cost of doing business. Like
it
once
really
in a while, it's going to get fucked up, and I've had it with a complete grinder, and what can I do?
Oh, there are also people out there who have definitely. I mean, I've definitely heard people who've said that they've claimed that something hasn't arrived and they have because there isn't any proof of signature. So I mean, like it's only when you can make the courier company guarantee that there's a signed body, and for that €1 or €2 extra per delivery, if it fucks up and it keeps happening, then they will develop a system where a photograph of the product being left somewhere, and that's the most concrete thing, you know, because at that point then if it's stolen but there's a photograph of and a date of when it was left on their doorstep, do you even have to reimburse?
Exactly.
You know, you can. Everybody is happy with it's an open and shut case in that respect.
I think it changed a lot with all the Ring doorbell thingies as well. Those, like when DHL tells you like, oh, we've delivered it then and there, and you just say like, well, I have a Ring doorbell, and DHL was not there. It'll.
Yeah, but Keith doesn't have access to his Ring doorbell, or as in the customer's door.
No. I hope not.
And the way I picked this up is that he's your wanker of the week. Is that it?
That's the one, GLS wanker of the week.
Okay, there you go.
Nice one to revert back to the actual subject. Yeah. What about you, Albert?
I don't have one.
Okay, that instantly makes you my wanker of the week.
Good. See?
Well, Fingal.
I'm going to let you go ahead because now that I've copped onto the whole process, I have to think of my wanker of the week. So I'll let you lead the way and give me a chance to.
Albert. Albert is my wanker of the week
Okay.
for not having a wanker of the week on his first wanker of the week.
I think the two of you fuckers are getting the easy way out.
Yeah.
I don't have one. I needed time to think about that. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's time.
Yeah.
There's time.
It'll give me a moment.
We don't put in time.
Yeah, I'll find a wanker. There's plenty out there, but you know what? I get over them quickly. I don't hold on to that. I think life's stressful enough by penting up and holding on to these angers. If I do that, I'll just slowly go insane. I think I look for a nice butterfly to kind of float past and just change my mind into where I'm going and then move on. I think I think the only thing that ever pisses me off more than anything is somebody who consciously will do something knowing the result, doing something negative or wankerish on purpose with that result in mind. And I just try not to surround myself with those people. And but look, it doesn't mean they don't exist. That's for sure.
It's a wise decision. Don't surround yourself.
The weather is my wanker of the week. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, we've had that.
Yeah.
We've had that one before as well.
Okay, there you go. Then
that's also an easy way out.
I'm being unoriginal.
Yeah.
I got a list of a few people who aren't wankers. If you guys want to hear them, we got a list of Patreon members. We got Christoph Stiegler from Kanjik Knives, Sven from Jord Addison, Johan Fagerlund from Fagerlund Bladesmith, Travis Haynes from Bird Forge, Roy Rutten, Mark Vanderworth from 118 Blades, Shay Dachon. We got one of our co-hosts there, Albert Anglenberger from Salzburg Messerschmied, Paul Balletta from Balletta Handmade, Corey Baker from Baker Forge and Tool, Alex Greenway from Trenton Knives, and you're going to have to say this Dutch one because I don't know what it is. You know who I'm talking about.
You got to hit the button first because I'm not accepting this French name from you.
No, that's not what it is. It's this
I
Dutch
know,
guy.
but I'm not accepting the one you tried, but there's only one
He
man.
wants to hear Ben Command say the
There's
name.
only one man that can do this.
Yeah.
Shay Dachon. Oui?
All right, Albert's going to edit that one out, and you're going to say the Dutch guy's name.
Fuck that. Pim van Delft.
Where's he from?
Holland.
Yeah, but the name of his company, his knife.
Van Delft Crafts.
Exactly what I would have said.
Yeah. Well then, fucking do it yourself, you lazy dickhead.
This is exactly the kind of person Fingal was just talking about. That like
don't surround yourself with such negativity.
Consciously, exactly.
PMA, motherfucker. PMA, man. Positive mental attitude.
I'm usually pretty positive.
Yeah, usually. Good.
Except for days that end in Y.
Let's talk about forges, Fingal.
Oh yeah.
What made you what made you want to get an Apollo forge?
Well, the whole backbone of this really is for the ability to probably tweak and play around with it. I want to build an outdoor kind of forge, I want to build an area for forging, and get bit by bit grow in it, get a better anvil. I've got hammers I've been collecting over time, and I think what would be lovely is for my kids to come out. We could actually forge something out and make something, and they're getting to that age where there's now the eldest is 14 and my youngest is 5. So I'm kind of at that sweet spot now where they're going to get to the age where you can trust a sort of a hairy, croaky voiced teenager to have a go hitting the hammer. I think that's kind of something exciting for me, is to kind of like have that bonding moments. Like I've been making wooden swords with them, and I'm going to make a wooden battle axe with one of my kids. They're into Dungeons and Dragons and all that kind of stuff that's kind of kicking off now.
Oh yeah.
So it's the beginning of their maker journey. So it's probably something that I'd like to kind of have a sort of a forge at hand. I have a tiny little thing that's, you wouldn't even fit a fucking horseshoe into it. And my dad now uses that to heat up have you ever seen calves being dehorned? it's one of those things that, it's one of those pain in the ass jobs, but actually we use that forge now for heating up the iron, and it's the best fucking thing in the world. It's much more efficient. So my only forge has been stolen by my father. And I think that, if I did, in a perfect scenario, if I built a kind of a little lean-to area where I could kind of have all this gear, and maybe at some point get a small power hammer, then sorry, I just started to get a cramp in my leg. Shit. So yeah, sorry, legs cramping. What I was thinking is that I eventually maybe get a little power hammer or a little press. I don't want to really kind of, do you know what? It's a fucking itch I want to scratch, and it's not something I want to permanently do, but having the ability to do it is enough. I mean, I want to have my little Jimmy DiResta moment and just know the toys are there. And if at any point or stage I want to tweak or adjust something, I have this area that once a year I can have a bonding moment with hot metal.
That's where the induction forge comes in good. Did you get a chance to try that out at
I did. That's kind of interesting. Although for me, what I'm afraid of is that it's probably got a larger chance of breaking if not used for years and years in very wet Ireland. I don't know if I can file it or put it away. And I think, am I better off just getting a kind of a forge and sort of having, going back to old school roots, making some kind of pokers and metal objects and things with my kids, and sort of tweaking the occasional blade. But like I said, my heart's in the place of getting Albert and getting Tobias to kind of make steel for me, and actually have the perfect metal that's on the shelf ready to kind of go for my grindstock process. But every so often you just gotta itch that scratch and tweak something, or you maybe have a special custom order. Or I have Mareko Mamasi's coming over, and we're going to go to a friend's forge nearby and use his place. But I'd love to be able to maybe, hey, I wanted to get my head around making good sourdough bread, but I don't want to do it for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
But I need to, every so often there's something I just need to try to master and get the hang of. And I think maybe to make integral knives is something at some point. And then when I get into retirement and I'm an old cranky fuck, maybe I'm going to get into folders. Who knows?
Old cranky and then folder making doesn't sound like a good combination.
Maybe just something to abuse.
Yeah,
give out about more.
Can you imagine being mad and making a folder at the same time? That's the all those tiny bits.
But what you mentioned about using steel from somebody who knows what they're doing or has been doing it for a long time, starting out with good materials, that's a big problem for knife makers. I think when you're starting out, you go in so many different directions. You're making your own micarta, you're trying to learn how to stabilize wood, you want to make your own grinder and your own forge, and before you know it, you're not making knives anymore. You just keep going in the shop and screwing around.
Well, it's when time becomes valuable, or the value of your time becomes something that you start to assess. Because, hey, look, if you're buying good stabilized wood at 85 euros a kilo, if not more, if you're buying these things, yes, you can make it cheap yourself. But if you're in a backlog of making products and you're in a system, where is it justifiable? I could make my own grinder, but I can also buy a good grinder from somebody, and then at least all the tooling and all the spare parts and everything from that moment on are off the shelf, and you're within a structure. So I think
you could buy a grinder kit and they'd have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, true. That's actually very true. And so if I was stone fucking broke and didn't have a penny to rub together, you are forced into doing these things.
Yeah.
And then you hopefully get to a point where you start to sell those products, and then you can actually start to perpetuate a circle where creativity and you know what to purchase, and the funnel comes together. And also you have consistency. I mean, I know I can't make stabilized woods as well as I can probably buy them in, because I don't have a high-end pressure pot. I have a stabilizing chamber, but I don't have the pressure pot.
Well, you don't need those.
It makes a hell of it. It does make a lot of a difference. And I mean,
I know. No, this was a side joke thingy.
Okay.
Sorry.
but the metals and the Damascus. Look, we can go in circles with this. I think the thing is, you actually just start to enjoy certain prospects, certain points of your production, and you outsource the bits, and yeah.
Oh, cool. I just need the quantity, and then.
Oh, you're going to come back to me on anvils. You mentioned.
We can do this right after. I'm right next to my anvils right now. So.
Cool. Because I'm waiting to hear back from. There was the other person that was interested in getting one. I was going to wait to hear back, but he's interested in the depth of the forge, which of course is all on the website. But look, if we definitely have the anvil, that would be something that definitely justifies the pallet, and then everything else probably gets easier from there, doesn't it, shipping wise?
Yeah, it does. Big old pallet full of steel.
Yeah.
Ireland's fucking far away from everywhere.
Yeah, it is, but it's still in the EU.
That's
so
true.
It's easier to ship to Ireland.
Yeah, I know. I think I've bored myself taking the piss out of the English over Brexit, but hey, they still don't find it funny.
It's so funny because it's like way easier to ship to you than to someone in England right now.
Yeah. But hey, I mean, everything else is just a really good paperwork. I mean, hey, it helps to sort of the VAT and all these kind of things. If you just get good at the systems of sort of like I find sending a parcel to America is actually really fucking simple.
It is, because there's it truly is.
As soon as you memorize and learn, I mean, like Keith, it must be a pain in the ass if you have multiple products and everything has to have a harmonized tariff code, and then everything has to, and then you have to almost like doing the invoicing for a sort of a courier can be a real fucking pain in the ass if you're not. Yeah. But if you're sending one product at a time, like sending just a knife to America, like it's a piece of piss.
Yeah, but then you do by hand. But Keith and I are just. It's like you put the product on the website and you fill in all that stuff and it all gets automated. At least that's what I do. I don't know what Keith does.
Yeah, I do everything myself. I don't want. I can't trust somebody else to do it. I mean, I can, but
no, not someone else. But I like at times I have my website updated by a website guy, but like the products themselves, like that harmonized code thingy. You just put it in once, and whenever someone clicks buy, it's all automated.
Yeah.
So it's not that bad once you have it set up correctly. Because
once you figure it all out,
oh my god, like in the EU, and then like with the the tax thingy that if a company buys from you, you don't have that tax. And then, but to someone else that doesn't have a business, you have to charge tax, and it's such a
EORI numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
Fucking drives me crazy.
Did you figure that out yet?
Yeah, I did. Whenever they, I don't have it automated like you, so you're that's something you have on me, man. You tried to explain it to me when I was starting out, and now I just have them. I need to put the number in somewhere. I don't even know where, and then it'll take it as a company.
In relation to the two of you with your stores, I mean, are there limitations to you holding back from just adding and constantly adding products to your range?
I do. I don't do I try not to do like the small bits, the wood, I always said I wouldn't do abrasives, but I do now, which is stupid. But I tend to keep it like machine stuff, machinery and forges, grinders, grinder parts, misting systems, plantains, stuff like that. And Keith is more on the
Oh, I know. I definitely know Keith's store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I started out with my first order with a G10 was like $1,200 worth of G10. That was like 5 years ago, and it was pretty much all just G10 synthetic materials and handle materials and stuff. In the last few years, I've moved into steel with Tobias and with Albert and tooling, and yeah, just keep putting everything back as much as you can back into the business and get it growing.
I think combined we
No, I
have
think
the
'cause
perfect store.
Yeah, I'm running out of room. I need to find a place to store all this stuff. I'm still
I was
doing it at
gonna
home.
ask,
I got it
is
in my
that the kind of thing-
basement. I got it in my office area. I got it everywhere. Stuff all over the place.
When it starts to overflow, yeah.
I have too much space, but no time.
Actually, that's the thing that becomes more. Yeah, things definitely. The more people it involves in your business to kind of make it work, it takes. I mean, it is. I mean, we couldn't do anything in our place without the staff that we have. But I feel like we're incredibly efficient in what we do with as few people as we have. Like there's 6 people making the cheese, and there's 6 to 7 in the smokehouse, and we have the office and the 3 in the farm. But at the same time, like we make 2 ton of cheese a week, and we make about nearly 2 ton of kind of cured meats and stuff a week. That's with 6 people on each side. But the thing that bottlenecks everywhere is the packing of each individual retail product or the shipping. I mean, like the shipping is, people think shipping is easy. It's a fucking
it's a
It's a lot of work.
I mean,
What I just wonder
it is a
with
lot
you
of work.
is why are you not 220 kilograms? With all the good stuff you make, I'd be eating the shit out of that all day.
Oh, as in, wait, why am I not a fat bastard?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I've got love handles like a motherfucker. I mean, there's a lot of love in these handles. Like I can't shake it. I yo-yo like a son of a bitch. And I do definitely fight with it. I do not have a bikini body at all. I just just take very nice photographs from good angles.
It's all in the angle.
Yeah, no, there's good products. Less is more. I think I'm more of. Do you know? I can't say I preach this, or I preach it, but I can't say I live it. I mean, I like to think that we don't eat much in the way of processed foods. I mean, but the vast majority will eat like, hey, look, butter and cheese and cured meats. There's a lot of these things that the body finds very easy to digest and break down. I mean, like the thing is that what some people are afraid of, hey, look, I'd sooner eat butter over margarine. And I think processed foods that are hard to digest, like these are the things that really kind of like can play havoc with your health. But I'm definitely not an example of good living. I'm too much of a glutton. I have to hold myself back. And the thing is that I can eat until I pop. I don't have that stop button as well. So I'm kind of screwed. But but luckily I'm active enough to counterbalance it. But definitely it is something I have to watch. I think, funny enough, beer is probably the worst criminal for me. I gave up beer for I gave up alcohol for the last 2 months. I find myself having to do these things to control it. I find that intermittent fasting and periods of giving up booze are usually what will help me kind of come back into line. But just trying. I feel happier at a certain weight and certain build, but sometimes my hunger will just win out. I am intensely gluttonous.
Are you saying you broke your sobriety today on the show with the Camone beer?
Yeah, I was gonna
No,
say that.
it was January and February I was dry. No, I'm definitely not. I think I've been actually drinking twice as much since I got back on it, so it probably doesn't help. I've been a nice bottle. I moved from my Camone onto a nice Jameson whiskey, which I'm sipping away here. My dad always said, "Save whiskey until you're 40. That way you've got something to look forward to." And I've now actually really started to click with good whiskies and actually find them enjoyable. I think I come from a long line of sort of decadent bohemians on my mother's side, people who really just love things. And I do find I have those orgasmic facial moments when I eat and consume something that is true pleasure. I feel it to my bone. And I do chase things. I will go out of my way. If I have, if I only had a small amount of money in my pocket, I would still probably blow that on something really tasting delicious over perhaps paying the electricity bill, if you know what I mean. The logic will prevail. I find that these sort of pleasures of food, I will blow it on that, because I think the pleasure that comes from that is something I rank very high. Hey, it's just a vice, definitely a vice of mine but I think I've just been surrounded by people my entire life because of my family and inheriting and moving into this food business. I find myself surrounded by people who have opened my eyes to true pleasure through consumption. There's things I never thought I would eat, or things that have crossed my paths that will just make me smile ear to ear, and they're so bizarre and so weird. Sometimes the unexpected will be the best, and like the surprise, like, hey, look, while it's fresh in my mind, like Austria, do you know that amazing pumpkin the green pumpkin oil?
Yeah,
having that on top of vanilla ice cream. Who
Tastes
knew
like chocolate.
that's probably unfucking believable. This
it's crazy,
incredibly intense. It's crazy, but it if you give somebody something and they're like, nah, I'm not eating that. Eat the fucking thing. Try it. And they're like, that is the most incredible thing I've ever eaten in my life. That ability to turn people's perspective and to try something that flips with your head. Yeah, I think I love doing that to other people, or just doing it to myself. And I will chase that definitely forever. Pleasure. Yeah. Who doesn't love pleasure?
So, you guys, what do you think? We were at 2.5 hours. Is that a show?
That's a show, man.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you for having me on.
Fingal, it was great talking with you. Had a good conversation. Where can everybody find you and buy some of those knives and cheese and all the stuff that you're making?
Well, there's not a lot of Fingals in the world. So if you look up Fingal, vast majority of the time you'll find me. And then Gabin is the stuff. So Google Fingal or Google Gabin and you'll find us.
We'll put you in the show notes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Oh,
all right,
there's
guys.
one more thing.
Fingal,
are you happy that you came on this podcast before that other mediocre podcast you're coming on soon?
Yeah.
I've been on the other one first. I think I had to kind of show up at yours at some point. Like,
what do you mean?
I heard that you had a competition, or was there something you were saying to Ryan?
Yeah.
There you go. So it's been a pleasure to be on this podcast. Thank you very much.
Nice.
There you go. Albert, edit that so it sounds better. No, Ryan's a great guy. He was on last week. It was a great episode.
Yes, yeah, I was listening to it.
Yeah.
I think that's why I said what I said just a moment ago, because you brought it up, and then you gave me more information than I think when we were messaging earlier on. I think it's fascinating. It takes a lot of fair dues to you guys, I think, for putting together podcasts. They're what entertain us when we're grinding for hours and hours on end. And it's a bad day when you don't learn something. So actually having friends and people in your ear that you come to know over time, over the little things, it means a lot. And I think each episode from no matter what podcast you listen to, and especially this one, there's something beneficial. And that might even be a good segue or segment or something to actually have the thing you may not have known segment or section. I mean, that's really, I think, something beneficial to a maker style podcast. I don't know how you'd go about doing that. But
do you have an example for us?
There you go. I think maybe my eutanized wheels. You can ask everybody for that tip of the trick or something that they might not know. It might be an interesting kind of point to kind of bring in, because I think it's how do you bring in a point of learning something? What's something that nobody else knows, or what's that one thing to kind of come through? Because everybody has a fucking parable that's very preachy and wankerish. I mean, like, the one thing is like, how do we make our lives easier? What's the one thing that we do? I mean, everybody knows that working harder and doing something like that, but I think, there's it's the little things.
I think you said it with the pumpkin seed oil on vanilla ice cream. That's
you go. That's another one.
Right? Yeah.
Tip of the week.
It tastes like chocolate sauce on ice cream.
Yeah, true.
It's perfect. That's perfect. We went first full circle.
Yeah. Bada bing, bada boom.
Great.
Perfect.
All right, fuckers.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Been a
We'll
pleasure.
talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
fuckers.
Bye.